might also be a buffer for Q4 as well. So it is that kind of backdrop that seems to have delayed this kind of US dollar liquidity tightening. But going into the later part of this year or early 2023, we do think that overall liquidity is tighter, and the market still need to embrace the tighter financial condition overall.
When it comes to here in Singapore, we had out-of-cycle tightening, which is quite rare from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, but we also have this warning that the growth outlook is very much challenged by what's happening in Ukraine, by the COVID shocks. We know the food inflation, food security issues as well. What are you expecting in further moves from the MAS and how that plays into Singapore dollar rates and the Sing dollar itself?
Yeah, the door, I think, is still remain open for MAS to tighten further. And even if the MAS does not tighten further, the fact that they have a positive Sing dollar slope means that the impact is ongoing, which means that the Sing dollar is managed against a basket on a mild appreciating path that would give the Sing dollar a little bit of resilience at times of broad dollar strength. And that actually also have a mitigating factor impact on Sing dollar rates, because if you expect Sing dollar to appreciate, that means that investors would be willing to hold Sing dollar in a lower rates than otherwise. And that has always been the dynamic. So when both the MAS and the Fed are tightening, we think that increases in Sing dollar rates would be slightly less than the expected increases in US dollar rates.
I want to ask you too, Francis, everybody around the world is watching the Federal Reserve. Seems to be there's more of a focus now as well on the European Central Bank, because they're getting ready clearly to start hiking rates. The hawks in their group would like to move a little more aggressively. Is that priced in? Is that something that we're going to see reverberating in Asia or not?
Yeah, indeed, the ECB, I think, is really pretty much behind the curve. So it would be the next lining up to start the rate hiking cycle. It's not being expected to hike in June as yet, but I think it has to start to give out some more hawkish signals to prepare the market for a slew of interest rate hike in the ECB. And back to Asia, as mentioned, BI, BOT, etc., those may also need to play catch up. But in Asia, we also have a lot of liquidity tools. We haven't really loosened previously, and now even Bank Indonesia are tightening through reserve ratio. So we think there is a combination of tools back in APAC.
All right, Francis, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Francis Chong is rates strategist at OCBC Bank on the line for us from Singapore. Looking at the equity market action, pretty flat on the regional benchmark index. Now seeing the Hang Seng market in positive territory in Hong Kong, up 0.5%. This is Bloomberg.
Now, Bloomberg traffic and weather. Route 34 southbound at Cottrell Road and Farrington Road in Old Bridge, New Jersey is shut down entirely due to an accident. There is DOT on the scene redirecting traffic. We're pretty much at a standstill on that southbound side from Spring Hill Road. Turnpike southbound between interchanges 14 and interchange 8 closed for construction on your overnight. Hudson River crossings looking pretty good, citybound as well as outbound. Bloomberg 1130, three-day weather forecast. Clear skies for tonight, low near 60 degrees. We'll see plenty of sunshine for tomorrow, high near 80. Partly sunny on Tuesday with a high 75 to 80. Cloudy on Wednesday with showers and thunderstorms expected, high 75 to 80. Right now in Central Park, clear skies and 70 degrees. With the best ride in and out of the city, I'm Amy Curran, Bloomberg 1130. Now let's get a Bloomberg Sports update.
Mets escape the Dodgers 5-4-10. J.D. Davis, the go-ahead RBI double. Yankees win streak is now 6 up in the Tigers 5-4-10. Joey Gallo with a 2-run blast. Lightning rallied from 2-0 down to surprise the Rangers 3-2. Rangers still lead that series, though, 2-1. NBA Finals, it's Game 2. Warriors in front of the Celtics, 68-56 in the third quarter. Boston leads the series 1-0. Rafael Nadal won his 14th career French Open, 22nd Grand Slam overall, and golf Billy Horschel won the Memorial. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Mark Bennett.
Markets, you can't predict them.
Let's look at yesterday's sell-off on Wall Street.
Big gyrations in terms of bond markets.
But when you listen to us, you'll come pretty close.
Let's take a look at small cap stocks.
We're taking a look at some of the sector winners, the sector losers.
Is this bullish or is it bearish?
Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. From the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBVR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Now a global news update.
Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw is providing new details on Saturday's deadly shooting in the city's popular entertainment district.
Horrendous and unthinkable acts happened in a very popular local and tourist hangout.
Police say 2 men and a woman were killed and a dozen others injured when several suspects fired into a crowd about 11:30 p.m. The victims ranged in ages from 22 to 34. The gunman fled the scene, and Philadelphia police are still looking for the suspects. Investigators are interviewing witnesses and going over surveillance video from bars and restaurants in the area. Senator Pat Toomey says President Biden has not been helpful in gun control talks following a recent string of mass shootings.
The president might have been a president who would reach across the aisle, try to bring people together, but he's chosen not to take that approach since day one.
Appearing on CBS's Face the Nation, the Pennsylvania Republican believes Biden has sided with the far left of his party and not reached out to Republicans. His statements come after the president urged Congress to pass legislation on gun control last week. Toomey is one of 6 Republicans working with Senator Chris Murphy to pass such a bipartisan package. The public is finally going to see the events of 2021's January 6th Capitol riots woven together.
How one thing led to another, how one line of effort to overturn the election led to another, and ultimately led to terrible violence, the first non-peaceful transfer of power in our history.
Representative Adam Schiff called that the most important takeaway for Americans once public hearings on the January 6th committee's findings begin on Thursday. Appearing on CBS's Face the Nation, the California Democrat also called the decision of the Justice Department to not prosecute President Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, or social media director, Dan Scavino, a grave disappointment. The Powerball jackpot is getting bigger. Lottery officials say nobody picked all 6 numbers in last night's drawing. That means Monday's jackpot will be worth $198 million. I'm Chris Coraggio. A policy enacted during the pandemic that made free school meals universal is set to expire at the end of this month. Elliot Haspel of the Robbins Foundation says the Support Kids Not Red Tape Act, which is stalled in Congress, would keep the program in place.
It's supported by all 50 Democrats. It's supported by 2 Republicans, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. It's opposed by Mitch McConnell and the rest of the GOP caucus. And I can't see any reason for opposing this other than trying to manufacture a crisis, right as we're hitting the summer, right as we're hitting Labor Day and the school year starting again.
The Department of Agriculture's school nutritional waivers marked the very first time in modern U.S. history that students were offered meals for free regardless of their family income. While some states are taking action to implement programs that will bridge the gap, the School Nutrition Association warns that without the waivers, school nutrition workers would have to scramble to reach out to families that haven't had to apply for assistance before. According to a USDA survey released back in March, 90% of those involved in school food choices have been making use of federal waivers. That includes both public and private schools. Los Angeles County's gas prices continue to climb. The Automobile Club of Southern California says the current local average cost of a gallon of self-serve regular is an all-time high of $6.35 now. That's 3 cents higher than Saturday's average and 20 cents more than last week's price at the pump. The current price is also $2.11 greater than a year ago. The county's average price of gas has gone up 26 cents the past 11 days. A AAA spokesman says the high demand for travel heading into the summer and ongoing concerns over global and local gas supplies will continue to put pressure on LA's pump prices. The current national average price for a gallon of gas is $4.85. 3 Chinese astronauts are traveling to the country's space station for an extended mission. A live stream showed the astronauts' rocket carrying the Shenzhou 14 capsule blast off today from the Gobi Desert launch site. The astronauts are starting a 6-month mission to install 2 new modules on China's space station project. I'm Chris Coraggio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence.
The new tools that a metaverse can bring allows you to create more immersive content.
Companies are beginning to sell less oil, more electrons.
In-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries.
The supply chain breakdown is combining with labor shortages. Will Eastern manufacturers continue to dominate, or will there be a renewed interest in Western manufacturing?
Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Over the next hour, we're going to dig inside the big business stories impacting Wall Street and the global markets.
Each and every week, we provide in-depth research and data on some of the 2,000 companies and 130 industries our analysts cover worldwide.
Well, today we're going to take a look at how the war in Ukraine is affecting LNG shipping rates.
Plus, the verdict on Tesla and its ESG credentials.
But first, let's take a look at emerging market investment opportunities, specifically when it comes to Latin America, particularly when there's lots of election question marks when it comes to Colombia or Brazil, etc. So to do that, we're joined by Bloomberg Intelligence equity strategist Gaurav Patankar. Gaurav, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Okay, so first of all, the overall thesis, we have high inflation, high commodities, high dollar, high rates. What does that all mean for Latin America?
Yeah, typically the simple answer would be that it may not be all that good, but we actually think it's a great situation for Latin America. Latin America has traditionally been underowned by emerging market pools of money, i.e. emerging market asset managers. That is just about changing. Valuations are undemanding. There's a lot of traction in the commodities complex, and that's really percolating into the real economy. So we really are seeing some capital spending, a reasonably good understanding of politics, but that's already in the price. And we are seeing a good capex cycle playing out in some of these markets. So Brazil and Mexico are two of our favorite markets in Latin America right now. All right, but if I'm emerging markets, I can't really go to China. I can't really go to Russia. I kind of have to go to Latin America. Are we seeing just some of that rotation maybe of funds?
That's a great question, Paul. There are 26 countries, and even in normal circumstances, it's a challenge given 26 different macro trajectories. Now, there are many places, as you correctly point out, that are no-goes. But I think there are three pockets of alpha as we see it. Latin America certainly is a bright spot that we've been talking about. Of course, it has had a decent year this year, but if you look at it from over the last 1, 3, 5, or even since the global financial crisis, I think you'll be surprised if I say that Latin America as a whole is down 40% in dollar terms since the global financial crisis, while the NASDAQ is, up somewhat 400%. ASEAN and India are the two other pockets for the emerging markets that we really like.
Staying in Latin America for a moment, would the bet in equities be commodity-related equities because we are seeing such a bull market in certain commodities, or is it going to be consumer-related?
Alex, anything in Latin America can never be completely detached from commodities, but I look at commodities and our research shows that it's almost like an ignition point. So commodities have to light the fire, which I think they have in a way, and that ultimately percolates into the real economy. I think the story from here on is going to be about the Latin American consumer showing up. We are already beginning to see some signs of that, but clearly you cannot detach itself from commodities. So if commodities were to plunge tomorrow, which is not our central case, but that's never going to be good for Latin America. But for now, in the next 12 to 18 months, we see the consumer really showing up.
All right, well, on that commodities call, all I think about in my brain is oil, but I know there's more than that. How do you think about the commodities call as it relates to Latin America?
Yeah, I wouldn't profess to be an expert in commodities, but I'll say this. Latin America is blessed with both soft and hard commodities. Clearly, with all the issues with food supply and food security, Latin America, firstly, given its geographical proximity to the U.S. And other consuming countries, as well as the abundance of soft commodities in the arable land, I think is extremely well positioned there, as well as hard commodities, especially when it relates to metals and some of the rare earths. So I think Latin America is suitably positioned outside of oil as well, and that's going to be a huge asset in the coming times.
All right, let's talk about India for a second. Where are the opportunities there?
India is often given, I'm challenged by my clients saying that the valuation is very high. But if you think about the single biggest market within emerging markets, or rather a single mainstream market where there is a combination of policy coordination, political stability, and reform momentum picking speed, ultimately driving capex growth as well as domestic investors showing up, India is definitely that market. And that's going to be a huge receptacle, especially to Paul's previous point that where is capital ultimately going to go between these 26 countries. So India has many opportunities. The particular areas of interest for us within India are digital consumption, fintech, as some of the banks are reinventing themselves into very, very solid fintech players. Those are two. But the most important and interesting opportunity in India is the industrial sector. It's not the most traditional when it comes to calling it exciting, but there is a very interesting theme around deconglomeration playing out, where value creation is happening as some of these old legacy family-owned enterprises are splitting up into value-creating units.
So if I'm an EM investor, I'm thinking about India, I have to ask the question, what is their COVID policy? Because in China, that's not working for investors. This shutdown every 15 minutes isn't really working for investors, certainly. How about in India?
Now, that's a very good question. If you think about it, one of the biggest things that we like about India at the moment is its geostrategic and geopolitical alignment with the West. And India's COVID policy is a great example of that. It's no different from what the policy in the UK is or the US is. In a way, they've really made testing available to a lot of people. There is data, but they're going about business as usual. And things are kind of just happening in India like they're happening here.
Just real quick, are funds flowing into emerging markets? What are investors doing here today?
So funds are not necessarily just flowing into emerging markets at any rapid clip, but we are seeing some stability as it relates to fund flow within emerging markets. Now, within emerging markets, we see movement of funds into Latin America. ASEAN, we're just beginning to see some traction. Some of the largest funds, as we have talked about in our note, are beginning to see ASEAN differently.
Amazing conversation. So fun. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Bloomberg Intelligence strategist Gaurav Pantankar.
Coming up on the program, the verdict on Tesla and its ESG credentials.
You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies in 130 industries. You can access Bloomberg Intelligence through BI Go on the terminal. I'm Alex Steele, by the way.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. It's 13 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
Because y'all means all.
Y'all means all.
Celebrate Pride Month with the Trailblazers and allies of the country music community.
On an exclusive SiriusXM channel, Country Pride.
Nashville's next generation comes together for Pride Month.
On SiriusXM 104.
For a limited time on now.
And continue listening through June on the SXM app.
Included with all trials and popular plans.
At New York Presbyterian, our cardiologists and cardiac surgeons are at the top of their game so you can stay on top of yours. Stay amazing. New York Presbyterian. We treat the most cardiac patients in the Northeast, according to the U.S. News & World Report 2021-22 rankings.
Heard my little sis is buying a car. You'll need my secret guide.
Gross, no way. I already used Capital One Auto Navigator.
I bet your credit score
wasn't impacted at all, so ha. I got my real rate and monthly payment, had an amazing test drive at the dealership, and made the purchase.
Taking the easy way out. That's so you.
Still not getting it. That's so you. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/autonavigator.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit look at luxury. After much to do, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee has gotten underway in the UK. 4 days of celebrations honoring Queen Elizabeth II's birthday and 70-year reign include military flybys, parades, and much pomp and circumstance. There's even special Corgi High Teas, a limited edition Barbie doll. And for the seriously flush, 48,000-pound three-night escape at the iconic Corinthia Hotel that includes a chauffeured Rolls-Royce transfer to the penthouse and a private dinner from Tom Carriage. Finally, a hybrid that pulls its weight. Mercedes-Benz's revamped GLC plug-in hybrid can cover a distance of more than 62 miles on just the battery. That's twice as far in electric-only mode as its best-selling $52,000 predecessor, and necessary to keep pace with increasingly stringent regulations on tailpipe emissions, not to mention surging gas prices. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day. This is Bloomberg on SiriusXM.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're gonna feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about those sounds? Those are the sounds of a brand new ice maker dropping cubes into a fresh glass of water, making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Final days ends June 8th to save up to 30% off select appliances. Valid May 19th through June 8th. Gas range extra. While supplies last. See store for details.
Ever wish you knew a Washington insider?
Details on the president's plan unveiled today.
Well, now you do.
An eye on the primaries.
Bloomberg Washington correspondent Joe Matthew.
The big vote set for tonight in the U.S. House.
Along with D.C.'s most respected news team.
Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis with us.
Bloomberg Sound On with Joe Matthew. Weekday afternoons at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's talk ESG. We seem to talk a lot about ESG. It is a growing topic on Wall Street, and Tesla is one stock that many ESG funds own. But is that ESG classification really accurate? Here to answer that question is Bloomberg Intelligence ESG strategist Shaheen Contractor. Shaheen, if Tesla's not ESG, I don't know what is. They're electric cars. Talk to us about some of the controversy about Tesla and whether it is an ESG company.
Sure, Paul. So I have to say Tesla is so debatable. So, while Tesla does fit this environmental theme, this impact theme, it does have challenges on the S and the G. And that's where
social and governance. Okay.
Correct, social and governance. And that's where we think its inclusion in ESG funds might not be appropriate. And that's why we think it's actually removed from the S&P, and we think that might have been long overdue.
So just to summarize for us.
Sure.
S&P.
Yes.
ESG index?
ESG index.
They removed Tesla. Really?
Yes. So they did. So they cited things like poor working conditions, racial discrimination. And I think people often conflate impact with ESG.
Okay.
And Eric Balchunas actually said this really well last week. He said, a company's products don't make you ESG.
Okay.
And I think that's very true.
So can you define the difference in impact and ESG?
Sure. So impact is creating some kind of additionality, like an impact in the world. I see ESG as risk mitigation. It's a company managing ESG risk within its operating boundaries to avoid unforeseen financial conditions. So it's I view it as impact is the impact of your business on the world, and ESG is the impact of the world on your business. It's kind of
interesting. All right.
Yeah.
So. Did Mr. Elon Musk have a response to S&P's action?
He was probably snarky.
Snarky?
Yeah, I'm saying
he did. I won't go into the exact words, but he clearly wasn't pleased.
All right.
But so then do we need to break out the E, the S, and the G a little bit differently now for certain companies?
So I think it's more important to separate the impact versus the ESG. If you think about ESG as a risk mitigation view, then no, non-financial indicators are all E, S, and G. So not necessarily, but I do think people need to understand the difference between E, S, and G and not think that one makes up for the other, right?
So environmental, social, governance, when you talk to funds, do they place different values on those three components, or is there some consistency out there?
So there's no consistency. Everyone has a different opinion. The way I like to see it is one should understand materiality specific to the company. So if the E is more material, that's what you should look at.
So if I'm a coal company, the E is pretty important there. Okay.
Yeah.
If I owned the S&P ESG index, now Tesla's out of it, does that mean anything for me?
Not to a large extent. So Tesla, at the end of the day, it is still in many funds. It is in all the MSCI ESG indices. So its removal from the S&P likely doesn't have much of an impact. But what it does do is it just fuels this debate, right? What is and what isn't.
It doesn't
ESG.
feel very good when you're like, Tesla's not in the ESG.
Yeah, exactly. The whole reason I got this silly car is so I could stop polluting the country. Okay, so what are the companies that are out there that are kind of debatable that people would be aware of? I mean, Tesla's a big one, but the people look at McDonald's and say, okay, they may be doing really well on social and governance, but is it good for your health and all that kind of thing?
So there are quite a few. I think one that comes to mind is Amazon, for example. Another that comes to mind is Apple. Many people think, Apple is an ESG darling, but then it has supply chain issues. So there are a few, especially if the big tech companies that fall within this bucket.
Well, to that point, I wonder, where are we in terms of getting better guidelines as to what makes something ESG? Earlier this week, this is obviously unrelated to what you cover, but DWS's headquarters were raided because of allegations of greenwashing. Now, okay, in essence, that's fraud, right? But it also is just really hard to understand what ESG actually means. And I wonder if we're getting any closer to helpful guidelines.
I agree. I think so. There are some regulatory initiatives that I think will help us at least get a little closer there. In Europe, you have things like the SFDR, which has a whole classification around, funds. Actually, maybe last week, or I might be off on days, but the SEC announced guidelines around ESG funds disclosure requirements. So we'll see how that plays out. But I do think it's a step in the right direction.
One of the big challenges I've always felt, and what I've heard more importantly from investors, is data. The quantity and quality of ESG data is just not out there. It's just not really available. Like if I want to do financial analysis, I can go on get my income statements, my balance sheets, my cash flow statements. But when I want to do ESG analysis, where do I go for data? Now, I know on the Bloomberg terminal, we have great ESG data on the FA function, which is a financial analysis function. And just like you can click on the tab for balance sheet or income statement, you can click on the tab for ESG. But I know that's a challenge, isn't it?
Yes. So, Paul, you're right. That's exactly where you go to find the ESG data, at least on the Bloomberg terminal. But no, so ESG data is not as good as financial data. It's not. It's still evolving. It's evolving over time. It will continue to evolve as, regulators step in. But it is a challenge.
And there's not what's ESG for a Fidelity fund manager or may be different from a fund manager.
What their definition is of it is going to be a little different how they quantify it.
Yeah, versus somebody at, Wellington funds or something.
Yeah. So back to your point on is Tesla ESG or not, I think everybody's opinion is different. Our opinion is it comes back to materiality. What are the material ESG risks a company faces, and is it managing it?
So give us an example of a company that would be an impact investment rather than an ESG investment.
Tesla.
Oh, okay.
Tesla.
Like what we were just talking about for the last 10 minutes?
So that's where Tesla would be a good, like an environmental or an impact theme, right? It creates an additionality
the world, basically.
Is it managing its risks and opportunities within its regulatory or operating environment?
All right.
It's essentially debatable.
All right. I'm a tad ESG hesitant or skeptic here a little bit.
No.
Although
really?
I have been...
Yeah, You've been coming around the last couple of years.
I've been coming around the last couple of years. But I look at, everything's okay when the markets are going up. But in 2022, we've got double-digit declines in equity indices. We've got double-digit total returns in a lot of the fixed income. My corporate bond, I lost 12% of my total return this year. How's ESG performing in that environment?
So ESG has been challenged, right? If you think of sector allocations, it's overweight tech, it's underweight energy, and that's not worked so far. That's not worked so well this year. So ESG funds have not seen great performance so far this year.
All right, good stuff. Shaheen Contractor, she's Bloomberg Intelligence strategist, covers all things ESG. We appreciate you being on the show.
Well, coming up on the program, how business could be getting even bigger for eBay.
You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries. You can access Bloomberg Intelligence via BI Go on the terminal. I'm Paul Sweeney.
And I'm Alex Steele. It is 25 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
SiriusXM presents The Sounds of Summer with Discovery Plus. A sonic road trip across North America. Featuring Discovery Plus stars Trixie Mattel, Josh Gates, and more as your celebrity tour guides. This week, things heat up as we head to Miami. The Sounds of Summer, available now on the SXM app. And tell your friends and family their SiriusXM radios are on free. Now through June 6th, visit SiriusXM.com/listen free to see what's on.
Heard my little sis is buying a car. You'll need my secret guide.
Gross, no way. I already used Capital One Auto Navigator.
I bet your credit score
wasn't impacted at all, so I got my real rate and monthly payment, had an amazing test drive at the dealership, and made the purchase.
Taking the easy way out. That's so you.
Still not getting it. That's so you. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/autonavigator.
At Boost Mobile, you get the power of the iPhone SE when you switch, which means the power to stream your favorite shows, download all the music, the power to FaceTime your ex.
It's over. Stop calling me.
On second thought, don't call your ex. Switch now and get an iPhone SE for $0, all on one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile. Free phone limited to new customers and one per line, excluding tax. Additional restrictions apply. 5G not available everywhere. See boostmobile.com for details. And stop calling your ex. She doesn't want to hear from you anymore.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. After all the stories about toilet paper, baby formula, and computer chip shortages, how does inventory glut sound to you?
They are higher than they were last year.
Poonam Goyal, senior retail analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, says levels are rising.
As merchandise is loaded off those ships, you could start to see a bigger inventory problem in the coming months.
Inventories are up by almost $45 billion total lately for some large consumer companies. Walmart among those already paying more for storage. And Goyle says all this could mean some good sales on appliances.
You're not going to store these bulkier items. It costs more to store them than to mark them down and get them out sometime.
And ballooning inventories do have Target and Gap cutting some prices.
If you have, let's say, spring dresses coming in June, they're probably going to be marked down.
But remember, some clothes are unlikely to go on sale, no matter what season it is.
If it's a black sweater, it'll sell, right?
I'm Denise Pellegrini. This is Bloomberg on Sirius.
I'm Bob Crawford, historian and bassist for the Avett Brothers. In the next episode of my audio documentary, Concerts of Change, we hear how Bono went from rock star to global humanitarian activist, featuring President George W. Bush, Bob Geldof, and Bono himself.
You know, you can work with someone you disagree with if the one thing you do agree with is important enough.
You can hear the full series of SiriusXM Volumes Concerts of Change, the soundtrack of human rights, right now on demand on the SXM app, free for most subscribers.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking? It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it. Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing. New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors. Peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners. No artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that biggie bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about those sounds? Those are the sounds of a new LG laundry set with Turbo Wash 3D that provides a powerful yet gentle clean in just 29 minutes, making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Shop final days ending June 8th to get an LG top or front load washer dryer set for just $778 each. Valid May 19th through June 8th. U.S. only. Gas dryer extra while supplies last. See store for details.
Seeing through the eyes of experts gives you a better view.
So let's talk about the pain trade.
And at Bloomberg, our market vision is 2020.
I am shocked by the moves that we're seeing in the rates market.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 119. Now, a global news update.
There is no magic bullet cure for those suffering from long COVID just yet. That's according to National Institute of Neurological Disorders Director Dr. Walter Koroshetz.
We don't understand what's driving it biologically.
And because of that, he explained that scientists have yet to develop a solution to post-infection symptoms. Koroshetz also noted that the range of long COVID symptoms can include neurological, pulmonary, cardiovascular, and digestive issues among survivors. 3 people are dead after a shooting outside a Tennessee nightclub. It happened early Sunday morning in Chattanooga. 14 people were shot in all. The police chief added all but one of the people killed or injured were adults. Authorities believe there were multiple shooters. Investors will have their eye on a key inflation figure later this week. The Consumer Price Index report for May will be released on Friday. The CPI in April rose by 0.3%. The year-over-year increase was 8.3%. I'm Chris Coraggio.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have any body to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
We'll be here each and every week at this time, tapping into our Bloomberg Intelligence analysts covering some 2,000 companies in 130 industries worldwide.
All right, coming up on the show, let's talk about eBay. It's the online shopping site and has a rising take rate. I'm going to talk about what that means, plus some new features, too. All that could lead to more revenue. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg Senior Analyst for U.S. Retailing, Poonam Goyal. Poonam, all right, school me a little bit here. What's a take rate?
A take rate is the percentage of revenue that a marketplace makes when you sell a product there. So if you're selling a $100 watch on eBay, eBay will take, as of right now, $12 on that sale. That is their current take rate, 12%.
All right, how is that take rate? That sounds like a nice deal, by the way.
That's pretty good for eBay.
Yeah, that's pretty good for eBay. How's that been trending historically, and kind of why do you see some upside potentially to that number?
Yeah, so eBay's take rate historically has been closer to 9%, so under 10% for a long time. Quite honestly, even since its inception, it's been under 10%. In the past few years, you've seen take rate rise from 9 to 12%. And the primary driver of that is the payment integration that they have just completed. If you shopped on eBay 2 or 3 years ago, you probably only were able to shop using PayPal. Today, you can shop on eBay using Visa, MasterCard, Amex, any payment type that you would like. And that's added a few hundred basis points.
Can that continue in that? I thought that everyone stopped using eBay and Etsy and stuff now that the pandemic is quote unquote over.
No, I don't think people have stopped using these platforms because they do still offer value and treasure hunt finds, right, that you can't just get anywhere. So these are not places that you go to like Amazon where you're looking for an iPhone charger or you're looking for, a bag of chips. Like, that's not what these platforms are for. They're really for unique things that you can't find anywhere else and that have value to them, especially on eBay, right, because it's resale. So it's things that you want but maybe can't afford at full price, or things that existed a long time ago and now they don't sell in the marketplace anymore really anywhere else.
It is crazy what people buy on eBay. A buddy of mine just bought a boat. I mean, I'm talking
a boat?
A big boat. So he flew down to Florida and he's like cruising back up to the Jersey Shore, supposed to meet him this weekend. He bought a boat.
Did he test the boat?
No.
What?
It's crazy what these people do. But they love it, and they swear that's where they get the deals. All right, so Poonam, the take rate here, how does it compare for eBay versus maybe some other competing platforms?
It's actually lower. So if you compare eBay to, let's say, a Poshmark, Poshmark's take rate is in the high teens, and RealReal's is in way over 25%. So eBay's take rate has historically been lower than other marketplaces that have come up really in the last decade to take share away in the resale market.
Interesting. I didn't know that about RealReal. And I'm personally, I sell on it, so I want to know that information. What are some of the other features that eBay is adding that could also help juice their revenue?
Sure. So in addition to just further expansion of their payments network, I think what they're also investing in is advertising. Advertising traditionally has not been a source of revenue, but with eBay adding promoted listings, with them featuring these listings on top and outside, they're able to generate more click per ad revenue, and I think that's going to also help the take rate. And then the other thing is, when you buy this boat that, Paul, you were talking about, or when you buy a $100,000 watch, you don't know who you're buying it from. So how do you know if it's real or not?
You don't.
So eBay has a program that it recently launched, which authenticates some of the goods that are sold on its platform. Now, they don't charge their sellers a fee to do this. This is to prove that they have credibility. But they recently, so if you bought a $100 sneaker, a $100 plus sneaker, they authenticate it for free. But let's say you wanted to sell a $50 sneaker and you wanted to still show that it was authentic. You as a seller now could tell eBay, hey, you have the platform, authenticate it, and pay them a small fee for that.
How has business for eBay been? Because I know it's always been a challenge establishing its identity in the retail e-commerce space vis-a-vis Amazon. How have they done over the last few years? And I guess that goes to kind of how they performed in the pandemic.
Yeah, so the last 4 years have been really about investing in the business and resetting the base. So this year, their revenues are expected to fall in the mid-single-digit range, but then begin to climb next year. And part of that decline that you're going to see is an intentional shift towards getting rid of low-value buyers and really focusing on the high-value buyers, that generate more than half of the GMV on their platform.
What kind of stickiness do we see from sellers and buyers there?
They do have a high stickiness rate. I mean, if you think about...
I guess if you get one boat there and you like it, you're going to go to the next one and get it the same place.
You may not get another boat, but you may get something else, right? Because now you know that you can find these unique type of things on eBay, so you can cross-sell that customer into other categories.
Really interesting conversation. Thank you so much. And I truly didn't know you could buy a boat on eBay. Shows you how much I know.
All right, coming up on the program, staking with the boat theme, the cruise industry looks for a return to normal.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries. You can access Bloomberg Intelligence through BI Go on the terminal. I'm Alex Steele.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. It's 39 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
His signature funk, slow jams, and psychedelic rock made him music royalty. Celebrate Black Music Month with the return of the Prince Channel. All his hits, plus live performances, including music from the just-released Prince and the Revolution Live album. On the Prince Channel, Sirius XM 105 all week. And continue listening through June on the SXM app.
Realtors abide by a code of ethics. This is Article 9 in action. Beth, a first-time homebuyer, knew nothing about the home buying process, except that she wanted to buy a home. But her realtor had the expertise to make sure Beth understood every document, even giving her copies to review with her lawyer so Beth could close on her first home with confidence. Complicated things explained in simple terms. The difference between an agent and a realtor is real. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. That's who we are.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
This is the Bloomberg Black Business Beat, brought to you by Geico. 2 years after the murder of George Floyd, President Biden signs a policing order to revise the use of force policies for federal law enforcement.
We're about to sign Advancing Executive Accountable Policing and Criminal Justice Practices to enhance public trust and public safety.
The measure comes after an attempt at legislation stalled in the Senate. It would impose new requirements on all federal law enforcement agencies, including a restriction on no-knock warrants and a ban on chokeholds and cartoid restraints. The president's executive order requires officers to intervene and stop the use of excessive force when they see it. The order also directs the Department of Justice to create a national law enforcement accountability database. All federal law enforcement agencies would be required to submit records there, including complaints and disciplinary records on a quarterly basis. I'm Renita Young. This is Bloomberg on Sirius
The arrival of summer means crisp linens, outrageous tans, and the buttery soft sounds of yacht rock radio. Set sail with the CEOs of Smooth, Loggins, McDonald, Skaggs, and more. Yacht Rock Radio, docking at Channel 14 for the summer, and always on the SXM app.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
Where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Hurry into Mattress Firm's best Memorial Day sale ever. Get a king bed for the price of a queen or a queen for a twin and save up to $500 on Sealy. Plus, get a free adjustable base with qualifying Sealy purchases up to a $499 value. Or shop Tempur-Pedic, the most highly recommended bed in America, and save up to $500 on adjustable mattress sets in stock for immediate delivery. And get a $300 instant gift. Talk to a sleep expert today, only at Mattress Firm. Restrictions apply. See store or mattressfirm.com for details.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking? It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it.
Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing.
New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors: peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners, no artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
Seeing through the eyes of experts gives you a better view.
So let's talk about the pain trade.
And at Bloomberg, our market vision is 2020.
I am shocked by the moves that we're seeing in the rates market.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries, this is Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 119. Now, a global news update.
There is no magic bullet cure for those suffering from long COVID just yet. That's according to National Institute of Neurological Disorders Director Dr. Walter Koroshetz.
We don't understand what's driving it biologically.
And because of that, he explained that scientists have yet to develop a solution to post-infection symptoms. Koroshetz also noted that the range of long COVID symptoms can include neurological, pulmonary, cardiovascular, and digestive issues among survivors. 3 people are dead after a shooting outside a Tennessee nightclub. It happened early Sunday morning in Chattanooga. 14 people were shot in all. The police chief added all but one of the people killed or injured were adults. Authorities believe there were multiple shooters. Investors will have their eye on a key inflation figure later this week. The Consumer Price Index report for May will be released on Friday. The CPI in April rose by 0.3%. The year-over-year increase was 8.3%. I'm Chris Coraggio.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Let's stay with the boat theme and talk cruises, specifically a push into the bond market for some of the big-name cruise companies. Joining us now, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Credit Analyst Jody Laurie. Jody, it's all about reopening still. It's all about traveling. It's vacation packages. It's going to be good for the cruise line guys. What are they doing in the debt market right now?
Sure, Alex. So I think what we're seeing is a continuation of 2021. And by that I mean is that these companies are at the precipice of getting back to normal, but aren't quite there yet. Whereas a lot of companies in leisure and lodging are really already feeling the normalcy going into 2022 summer season. The cruise lines still don't necessarily have all ships in the water, depending on the cruise, and are not generating positive free cash flow yet. So we're seeing these companies tap the debt market still, trying to fill these cash gaps, address their balance sheet, and just figure out ways to survive this next year so that in 2023 they can feel more normal.
All right. So it's interesting here. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, when the world shut down, the cruise companies were one of the first companies to really come to the market and raise capital because, boy, they knew that they were going to have, really, really strong balance sheets with lots of liquidity. That was a good move. The strategy here is just kind of hang on as we kind of reopen. Are certain companies doing better than others?
So, Paul, it's a little bit more complex than that. I think, first of all, the cruise lines were among companies to figure out ways to shore up liquidity at the beginning, as you stated. But if you think about it, the hotel companies, for example, tapped their revolvers. So they were flush with cash in another way. The cruise lines didn't necessarily have that same flexibility because they were dealing with the fact that they had this moratorium that was imposed on them by the CDC. So they weren't allowed to operate, whereas the hotels just weren't operating in normal settings. Now, the cruise lines, what was interesting about them is they all came to market in spring of 2020 to just build up their cash balances, which was a very smart move, but paid up to do so. And while 2021 was a very great year for them in order to refinance it and bring down their interest expense on a lot of the debt that they paid up for, we're starting to see that at least as interest rates rise this year and as the high-yield market isn't as favorable as it once was, they might have to pay up again in order to keep that cash balance high while they address the large debt maturities that they have.
What kind of yields are they looking at right now?
So for Carnival, they just issued a senior unsecured bond in May, and it was 10.5% going out to 2030. Which, if you compare that to what they did in October, which in October they issued a senior unsecured expiring in 2029, and that one is only 6%. So you see the very big difference in the jump in yield between October and May, and that is really more so a function of market environment than it is a function of the actual individual company itself, in my opinion. These companies are still on track to do what they said they were going to do, which is get all ships in the water by the summer. They're showing that their advanced bookings are growing. They're showing that they're starting to return to normal. They have their eye on reducing the balance sheet starting 2023, meaning bringing down the debt load organically. But they need the cooperation of the capital markets in order to do so. And that cooperation might not be as prevalent as it once was.
Interesting. And you mentioned a lot of that some of those issues were unsecured. Why did they do that? Why wouldn't they go secured using their ships as collateral? Or maybe they're already used as collateral.
Well, actually, they removed a lot of the what you would call encumbering of the balance sheet over the past year. So in 2020, when they issued debt, and funny enough, Carnival issued debt of similar coupons in 2020, but it was secured debt.
Okay.
And so if you're issuing secured debt traditionally, secured debt has a lower coupon than unsecured debt. So imagine if they had issued unsecured debt back in 2020, it would have been 15, 16% if they could have gotten it. Now, they don't want to necessarily issue secured debt if they don't have to, because that provides them another lifeline if things get uncomfortable once again, whether we enter a recession, consumers start really feeling the effects of inflation and aren't taking vacations like they were or are planning to right now. And so I think the cruise lines are trying to keep every option open that they have available to them as much as possible. So senior unsecured is a better way to go as long as the markets are open to allowing them to issue. But I do think it was interesting to see Carnival issue when you had Royal Caribbean and Norwegian issue in January and February this year, and the climate just completely changed between the Fed conversation, between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, there's all these factors that just shifted the market environment between January and February and May.
Really interesting stuff. 10%. Man, that's back. Okay. Jody, thanks a lot. Jody Laurie, a Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Credit Analyst. All right, let's shift our attention now to energy and Russia, because as the war between Russia and Ukraine rages on, you get LNG shipping rates remain very strong. So for more on that, we want to welcome Bloomberg Intelligence Analyst Talon Custer. Give us a sense. What kind of shipping rates are we talking about for LNG?
Yeah, we've seen a recent climb. There's increased interest in term chartering. You have energy security needs. And in addition to that, there's a lot of uncertainty. So these importers are looking to lock up shipping capacity, get vessels to bring the gas for their summer needs and also cover the winter. So we're seeing a lot of, the spot rates are rising, but also the one-year term charter rates as well.
And, I mean, let's talk about this. This demand situation seems like really robust. I mean, there's that shortage of energy, and we saw, 6 months ago in England where they really had some natural gas issues. Is there enough shipping to meet this demand?
There is enough shipping. It's pretty well balanced this year, and one thing that's helped out with that is with shipping. Last year a lot of U.S. cargoes were going to Asia, and those longer voyages tie ships up for longer and tightens capacity. But the shorter voyages to Europe loosen that up a little bit. So I think that's helped. But it's pretty well balanced this year.
Where are the most intense shipping routes? Like, where are the most expensive routes? Where are the ones that are easier to get to? What's the most populated?
They do it by day. I mean, the benchmark we go by is just dollars per day. So it's a matter of how, like I mentioned before, how long the voyages are. So a voyage from the U.S. to China, for example, or U.S. to Japan, it takes about twice as long to get there as to Europe. And there's different routes as well, right? So if you go through the Panama Canal, you'll get to Asia quicker as opposed to going around the Cape of Good Hope.
Well, who goes around the Cape of Good Hope these days? That's why we made the Panama Canal, right?
I know it's all backed up now.
Yeah, there's only so many slots. And of the limited slots in a given day, only a couple are allocated to LNG carriers. So like last year, for example, when demand was robust to go to Asia, a lot more ships had to go around the Cape of Good Hope and Suez Canal.
All right, so if I'm a refiner, or if I'm down in liquid natural gas player down in Louisiana or Texas, all my stuff's going to Europe now, isn't it?
For the most part, yeah. Last time I checked, it's roughly 3/4 of U.S. LNG is going to Europe.
Can we do more? Can we do more LNG to meet demand?
They're pretty maxed out at the moment. But I think one thing we've seen with Russia's invasion is that it's expedited investment in infrastructure on the import side, and we've seen a lot more long-term contracts signed, which you need to get the financing to get more liquefaction projects. But they're pretty maxed out now, but we're seeing, we saw a recent FID, and it takes, about 4 years to get a project going. So we'll see more in the coming years.
And the long-term contract is important because for a while they were going shorter term, like they were doing spots rather than long. So like there's so much natural gas, I don't need to do long-term contracts, and that shift is quite significant. In terms of where the biggest holdup is, in terms of getting more supply out and shipping around, is it export facilities? Is it reliquefaction facilities? Is it actual vessels? Is it actual natural gas supply? Do you have a read on that?
Yeah, it's on the liquefaction side. So I would suspect that LNG demand would be even higher if there was enough supply. Supply is essentially a constraint, and we'll see that more even next year. The trade growth is going to slow because there's just not that many liquefaction projects coming online. And even over the next couple of years, Russia, their Arctic 2, Baltic LNG, those are projects that were going to make up a significant amount of the LNG that was going to hit the market. And now there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding those projects.
What's up next for LNG? I mean, I think right now it's as good as it gets, isn't it?
For the exporters, yes. I mean, you have long-term contracts that get a solid margin, and then for those trading on the spot market, the netbacks are outstanding for them. But, on the import side, especially for Europe that has been buying a lot of the spot cargoes, they are the prices are exorbitant.
Strugs.
Probably unsustainable in the long term.
Yeah. And they have to also build more transportation and pipelines, et cetera. Really great stuff. Thank you so much, Talon Custer, Bloomberg Intelligence analyst, joining us.
That's this week's edition of Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries.
And remember, you can access Bloomberg Intelligence through BI Go on the terminal. I'm Alex Steele.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. It's 57 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
Here's today's STEM tip. Make your selfies look even better with science. Take your pics at golden hour right before the sun sets. The wavelengths made by the atmosphere create a perfect golden light for that beautiful face of yours. Learn more at Chic and STEM. A message from the ad council.
SiriusXM is the home to the best in podcasts, including Basic.
Hey, I'm Doug Herzog, former TV executive and cable weasel.
And I'm Jen Chaney, a critic for Vulture and New York Magazine, and we're the hosts of Basic,
the official podcast of the unofficial history of basic cable television. We'll talk to the biggest stars about all your favorite shows.
Basic is available now on the SXM app, and tell your friends and family their SiriusXM radios are on free now through June 6. Visit SiriusXM.com/listen free to see what's on.
Whether you're looking to buy or sell a home, when you work with a RE/MAX agent, this is how it feels. That's the sound of a RE/MAX agent doing their due diligence on a listing they know you'll love. Visit RE/MAX.com or download the RE/MAX app to find the right agent. The right agent can lead the way. Each office independently owned and operated.
Virginia isn't for one type of person. Virginia is for road trippers. Are we there yeters? Mountain hikers and dock sitters because they're not active hikers. People who are kayakers. People who are not kayakers. Campsite campers and horseback riders. Wow, there's a lot to fit in here. Flatwater lovers, beach suntanners, hole-in-the-earth explorers, and Shenandoah Valleyers. Should I keep going here? Well, you get the idea. Because Virginia is for all sorts of lovers. So come love it for yourself.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking?
It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it.
Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing.
New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors: peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners, no artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about those sounds? Those are the sounds of a new LG laundry set with Turbo Wash 3D that provides a powerful yet gentle clean in just 29 minutes, making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Shop final days ending June 8th to get an LG top or front load washer dryer set for just $778 each. Valid May 19th through June 8th. U.S. only. Gas dryer extra while supplies last. See store for details.
From the financial capital of the world, this is Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 119. Now, a global news update.
One person is injured after a shooting at a hospital in North Carolina. It happened at Wayne Memorial Hospital in Goldsboro, east of Raleigh. The victim's injuries are not life-threatening. A spokesman for Wayne County said the hospital lockdown has been lifted. The suspect fled, and law enforcement knows the shooter's identity. Philadelphia police are searching for suspects behind Saturday's deadly shooting in the city's popular entertainment district. Police say 2 men and a woman were killed and dozens others injured when several suspects fired into a crowd about 11:30 p.m. The victims ranged in ages from 22 to 34 years old. The gunman fled the scene, and Philadelphia police are still looking for the suspects. A top Biden administration official says the price of gasoline is not set by the Oval Office.
They're not calling the administration to ask what they should do. They're doing it based on their goal of maximizing their profits.
Appearing on ABC's This Week, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg accused big oil companies of not ramping up enough production at the expense of consumers. He said soaring fuel prices can't be directly regulated by the Biden administration. Buttigieg praised the president's decision to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, saying it helped stabilize global oil prices. Investors are anticipating the release of the Consumer Price Index report for May. The key inflation indicator will be released on Friday. The CPI in April rose by 0.3%. The year-over-year increase was 8.3%. In other market news out this week, the nation's trade balance for April comes out on Tuesday. Ukraine won't be competing in the World Cup later this year. The men's soccer team there lost 1-0 to Wales thanks to an own goal. Ukraine's coach said he wanted the people of his country to remember everything they did. The Tribeca Festival, formerly known as the Tribeca Film Festival, is back, kicking off this Wednesday with some of the entertainment's biggest names. On the schedule this year are 110 feature films. The festival got its start back in 2002, thanks in part to Robert De Niro, in an effort to help New Yorkers rebound after the September 11th terrorist attacks. I'm Chris Coraggio. The national average for a gallon of gas is up to $4.85. That's up more than 25 cents from a week ago. The head of petroleum analysis for GasBuddy thinks the national average will reach $5 per gallon as soon as June 17th. California has the most expensive gas, with pump prices in L.A. now averaging $6.35 a gallon. Queen Elizabeth is making a brief public appearance on the final day of her Platinum Jubilee celebration. Dressed in a bright green outfit, the Queen stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace with several other members of the royal family and waved to the crowd of thousands. The 96-year-old monarch skipped royal events on Friday and Saturday due to mobility issues. The Queen previously appeared on the same balcony inspecting troops last week and appeared in a pre-recorded comedy sketch with Paddington Bear. In tennis, another clay court title for Rafael Nadal. Today, Nadal won the French Open for the 14th time, beating Casper Ruud in straight sets. It's Nadal's 22nd overall Grand Slam title. The PS5 has sold over 20 million units. The popular video game console was released by Sony back in November of 2020, selling 10 million units in the first 8 months. Since then, Sony has run into supply chain issues, and finding a PS5 in stores has become increasingly difficult. Despite the shortage, fans kept buying consoles online faster than any previous PlayStation. Sony announced they'll be increasing the production of the console this year so that everybody who wants one can get one. Ann Turner Cook, the original Gerber baby, is dead at the age of 95. Cook was 5 months old when a neighbor drew her sketch and submitted it for a national contest Gerber was having back in 1928. The company fell in love with Cook's image and made her the face of Gerber baby food. Her identity was kept a secret for over 40 years. Rumors swirled for decades that the baby could be Humphrey Bogart, Elizabeth Taylor, or even Shirley Temple. But in the 1970s, Cook revealed that it was indeed her face on Gerber products worldwide. She had become an English teacher and a mystery novelist, as well as a mother herself. I'm Chris Coraggio.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt, and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners. This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week.
We turn our attention to the markets this week. U.S. CPI numbers reinforcing concerns about inflation.
The financial stories that shape our world.
A really different reaction in the markets. More indications of just how hot the U.S. economy really is.
Through the eyes of the most influential voices.
Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary. Catherine Keating, CEO of BNY Mellon. Sam Zell, Chairman and founder of Equity Group Investment.
Bloomberg Wall Street Week with David Weston from Bloomberg Radio.
More guns for Ukraine, talk about fewer guns in the United States, and pinning the tail on the donkey of inflation. This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston. This week, special contributors Larry Summers of Harvard and Steve Ratner of Willett Advisors take us through another volatile week, caught between the rock of inflation and the hard place of economic downturn.
My top priority, addressing inflation.
Another week, the 13th of war in Ukraine, with no end in sight, but Europe tightening the screws on an embargo of Russian oil.
We decided then to have a ban now on de facto 90% of Russian oil imports to the European Union by the end of the year.
And the United States is sending yet more weapons to aid the Ukrainians.
Just this morning, President Biden announced a significant new security assistance package to arm Ukraine with additional capabilities and advanced weaponry, precisely what they need to defend themselves against the ongoing Russian aggression.
It was another sad week of mourning those lost because of gun violence, as legislators in Washington once again took up the question of gun safety.
And these families, my colleagues, don't want thoughts and prayers. They want their elected leaders to respond to their suffering.
But when it comes to the economy and the markets, the week was consumed with concerns about inflation, as President Biden met with Fed Chair Powell and Treasury Secretary Yellen, making it clear that the Fed is in the lead.
My plan is to address inflation. It starts with a simple proposition. Respect the Fed. Respect the Fed's independence.
even as Secretary Yellen fessed up to underestimating the issue.
I was wrong then about the path that inflation would take.
On Friday, we all got the numbers we had been waiting for, and those jobs numbers came in stronger than anticipated, adding 390,000 jobs in May, keeping the unemployment rate at 3.6% and showing wages growing at a 5.3% annual rate, which pointed to more Fed tightening and took some of the lift away from the markets, with the S&P and 500 and NASDAQ losing on Friday all that they'd gained during the rest of the shortened week, leaving the S&P for the week down 1.2% and the NASDAQ down almost 1 full percent, while the 10-year yield reached back toward 2.93%, finishing at 2.9%. So to help us make sense of it all, we welcome back now Chris Ailman, CIO of the California State Teachers Retirement System, and Sarah Ketterer, CEO and co-founder of Causeway Capital Management. So, Sarah, thanks so much for being with us. Let's start with you on the equity side of it here. What did we learn this week out of these markets?
Well, markets churn during the week. There seems to be uplifts whenever there's some sense that the Fed will back off, but it's very unlikely. There's so much need to crush inflation now, given what a terrible tax it is, particularly on low-income people.
On the other side, of the bond side, Chris, what did you take out of the week?
That we're at 2.9 and heading to 3% on that 2-year rate, and the curve is going to be flat. I don't know if it's going to go inverted. It already did that earlier, David. So we've got the signal that a recession is somewhere way out there. But, you know, bonds are going to keep backing up. The Fed is tightening. The facts are the facts. The Fed will tighten throughout 2022.
Well, so we've been told by Chair Powell, Chris, that he has the tools necessary to deal with inflation. Does he?
Not this type of inflation. I mean, his only tool is raising rates. And this is the kind of inflation that doesn't have a direct impact. It's a supply problem. It's crude oil. It's commodities. Eventually, but it does mean that he's going to have to raise them consistently and a whole bunch higher than I think people are anticipating. So rough road ahead. I'm very concerned.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He has to lower demand in order to keep prices under control, and that's going to require, I mean, we've just started, not to mention the shrinkage of the Fed balance sheet, and other central banks other than China's are all doing this too. This is a global tightening.
So, Sarah,
when you say slow demand, that means slow down the economy. If you're owning stocks, where do you hide?
Yeah. Well, I don't believe in raising cash because it's one thing to raise, another to put it back into the markets at the right time. That's why market timing is so difficult. And our institutional clients and our funds expect us to be fully invested. So the key here is to be diversified and use a lot of risk metrics in order to know just how much volatility you're likely to anticipate, and then attempt with the better companies to be defensive. We just outperform as markets swoon. But these are cycles, and then we'll cycle back up again. At that point in time, we need to be in stocks that would take advantage of the impending recovery. We just haven't gotten to the bottom yet.
Chris, to go back to Sarah's point, you've got to slow the economy. Hook it up with the jobs numbers we got on Friday, because that didn't look like the economy is slowing very much. How much does the economy need to slow? We heard from Bill Dudley, the former Fed president here in New York, and he said that actually we got to go way above 4% on unemployment to get the inflation back down to 2%.
No, you're on the point, David. You got to realize the amount of stimulus that the Fed and Congress kicked into the U.S. economy during the pandemic. And we're still living off of that buzz. I got to tell you that, you know, balance sheets of average consumers are still, their checking accounts and their bank accounts are still cash rich. They're not spending that money. They're saving some of it. But, you know, you've got a strong employment market. You've got 5 million people who think they're wealthy enough to not work. I mean, that's just amazing to me.
Okay, Sarah Ketterer of Causeway Capital and Chris Ailman of Kelsers will be staying with us as we ask them to take all that they've just told us about them and put it to work in the markets. That's next on Wall Street Week on Bloomberg.
SiriusXM presents Masterclass Hour. Each week, hear the best from Masterclass, the streaming platform where anyone can learn from experts from around the world. Art, business, sports, food, and so much more.
I want to become French. I want to think of garlic. I want a French girlfriend. That was my calling.
Hear Masterclass Hour now on SiriusXM Stars 109, Business Radio 132. Tell your friends and family their SiriusXM radios are on free now through June 6th. Visit SiriusXM.com/listen free to see what's on.
Whether you're looking to buy or sell a home, when you work with a RE/MAX agent, this is how it feels. That's the sound of a RE/MAX agent doing their due diligence on a listing they know you'll love. Visit RE/MAX.com or download the RE/MAX app to find the right agent. The right agent can lead the way. Each office independently owned and operated.
Hurry into Mattress Firm. For a limited time, save up to $500 when you get a king bed for the price of a queen or a queen for a twin. Plus, get a free adjustable base with qualifying Sealy purchases, up to a $499 value. Or get up to 60% off America's top-rated brands, like Sealy Queen mattresses starting at $279.99 or Sleepy's at $169.99. In stock for fast delivery, only at Mattress Firm. Restrictions apply. See store or mattressfirm.com for details.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing turbulence.
It's a turbulent summer ahead for airlines.
To be fair to them, nobody has ever had to try to bring an airline back from the kind of slump that we saw after the pandemic, so it's a learning curve.
Bloomberg opinion columnist Brooke Sutherland.
We've seen a really strong resurgence, particularly in the leisure market in the U.S.
So what's the problem?
A lot of these companies have had a very difficult time in terms of right-sizing their capacity to meet that strong demand that they're seeing.
That difficulty is behind the recent travel blow-ups we've seen with thousands of flight cancellations. It's also why
you've seen a number of airlines dialing back their capacity plans for the summer, not because they can't sell the tickets, but because they don't necessarily have the staff.
Sutherland says correcting support staff shortages will take months, and because we want them properly trained, getting enough new pilots will take years.
Please remain seated with your seatbelt securely fastened.
I'm Andrew O'Day. This is Bloomberg on SiriusXM.
Whether you're looking to buy or sell a home, when you work with a RE/MAX agent, this is how it feels. That's the sound of a RE/MAX agent doing their due diligence on a listing they know you'll love. Visit RE/MAX.com or download the RE/MAX app to find the right agent. The right agent can lead the way. Each office independently owned and operated.
Everyone loves shopping online. Well, I'm going to tell you what I tell my golf buddies when they buy clubs. Stop searching for coupon codes. Download Capital One Shopping to your computer. Capital One Shopping instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Plus, it's free, and you don't even need a Capital One card to use it. That's like hitting a hole-in-one without even trying. Capital One Shopping. It's kind of genius. What's in your wallet?
Savings and available coupons vary.
When Paul Sweeney and Matt Miller bring you the day's market news.
How do you think investors should view Bitcoin?
You can count on some frivolity.
We've never taken them to Disney, so just failure on so many different fronts.
Bloomberg Markets. Extensive, essential, and endlessly entertaining.
I'm not a pet person. I'm a financial analyst.
By the way, someone writes in and says, I didn't realize Paul hated American values.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week with David Weston from Bloomberg Radio.
Where else but on some dead planet lost in space could have come the evidence of inflation, undiscernible on this planet, that led the starry-eyed Federal Reserve to raise interest rates for the third time since February, and thereby throw another cosmic monkey wrench into the financial markets. The Fed's fascinating, if wacky, theory that the way to bring down long-term rates is to keep on raising short-term rates is ever more clearly not produced by any evidence this side of Neptune.
That, of course, was Louis Rukeyser on Wall Street Week way back in 1994 when inflation seemed like it came from a different planet and he could see no reason for raising rates. Well, now, almost 30 years later, we're not on Neptune anymore and there's plenty of reason to raise rates, which poses the question for investors of what they're to do about it. Sarah Ketter of Causeway Capital and Chris Ailman of Kelsters have stayed with us. So, Chris, let me start with you as the bond guy here. We saw the yields really shoot up. They've settled back down now some. They're staying pretty under 3 so far as we can tell. Is this a time to be investing in bonds?
David, I love that clip. Thank you for showing that because I remember that show. I made my wife delay our dinner out on Friday night just so we could watch Lou. My favorite coverage all the time. You know, I'll quote Howard Marks here. If you buy bonds and can hold them to maturity, that's a good, safe investment, and you can get high-yield bonds north of 7%, which is a good return. The problem for most of us is we have to mark those to market, and the Fed is going to raise rates consistently because now, unlike 1984, we do have inflation, and the Fed is trying to fight it. So bonds, I think, at this point, I would be underweight fixed income. And I would not try to hold a bond because I think yields are going to go higher and higher, which is going to drop those prices lower and lower. This is a time where you need to find good, long-term, but safe and boring investments. So when I think of Sarah and always buying kind of stocks, what kind of boring,
you think boring,
stocks
right?
are out there?
Oh, I love being associated with boring.
Well, but no, he's asking you what kind of boring stocks are there out there, Sarah? Can you find some for us?
Oh, of course. I have a whole portfolio of them. But what isn't boring is what's done so well this year, energy. I would have had old fruit thrown at me 2 years ago if we talked about oil and gas stocks. And then you have all the other defensives, utilities, and the metals have done well, the consumer staples. And what has been a disaster this year to date has been the prior darling, the information technology sector. It's particularly bad outside the U.S. and terrible in the U.S., second only to consumer discretionary. And they both had their multiples massively contracted. But in that rubble of IT, the information technology sector, there are some fantastically defensive companies. We call them value tech. And again, got a big yawn for that. But companies like Fiserv, which is one of the, we think, the best financial technology companies, they provide merchant acquiring, bank processing software. They're critical for banks and credit unions to run their transactions. And that means the business is really sticky and the multiples on the stock is quite low. The management's excellent. They made a big acquisition. They're paying off the debt associated with that. It just goes under the radar. But for every one of those transactions, there's a fee. And so it's one of these wonderful, dull businesses, and it generates so much cash. And that's exactly what we're looking for now for clients, are businesses that can just ride through whatever the economic environment is ahead and deliver. And that creates less volatility and some downside protection.
So, Chris, does it sound good to you, boring stocks?
Well, what sounds good to me is steady cash flow, you know, and the kind of stock that Sarah's describing, I would describe also as infrastructure. We do those kinds of investments. So outside of the equity market, when you own a pipeline, or better yet, you own an electricity line, you own a toll road, that steady, consistent cash flow really pays off. And real estate in this kind of a market, I wouldn't be a big buyer of real estate, but if you've got it and you can hold it, then you've got some steady cash flow. So those are the kind of things that help you through this type of a difficult market. All of those levels of uncertainties, not just the Ukraine war, the struggles with China. And I think it's a real challenge when you look around the world to find those kinds of investments. Sarah, you invest in the emerging markets. Are there those kind of boring yield opportunities in EM countries?
Not many, because people tend not to go to high-risk geographies to get boring. Usually they want growth, and they're willing to take some risk to get it. But you mentioned China, Chris, and China's fascinating because China, in a way, is ahead of the rest of the world in terms of earnings downgrades. We've had COVID arrive later, and it created major lockdowns in Shanghai and Beijing, and you have like 50 million people were stuck in their homes, more than that. So all of that has created a real impediment to economic growth and hence the earnings downgrades. And the stock market was absolutely horrible. So the Chinese companies trading in Hong Kong, the ones trading in the U.S. in ADRs, and the ones trading in A shares on the Chinese mainland exchanges, all of them terrible. And this is a rare opportunity in China being the largest component of any emerging market index. That just means that the indices have fallen, but there is the potential for significant recovery because the only central bank globally is engaged, major central bank engaged in stimulus now, not tightening, but stimulus is China's.
So one thing that certainly was not boring this week was ESG investing. We had some very senior executives lose their job over it. A lot of accusations of greenwashing. Where is ESG investing at this point? Chris, let's start with you. What do you think about ESG? Is it here to stay? Is it really having a tough time of it?
Oh, there's no question it's here to stay. But David, let's get away from the initials. And if I mention to you long-term business risk, everybody and every CEO would absolutely agree. Yes, there's greenwashing, but the question is, and you led into the show with it. On one hand, you have us sending weapons to Ukraine, but then the horrible school shootings. And as a fund that represents teachers, we're offended by the lack of federal follow-through on gun control, or at least a better sustainable industry. Their ESG is absolutely a reality, whether it's environmental, social, or governance. And I've been saying for a long time, David, that climate change is real, material, and is going to massively impact our lives in the next 10 years.
Thank you so much to Chris Aylman of CalSTRS and also Sarah Ketter of Causeway Capital. Coming up, we're going to take a look at what's happening next week in markets around the world. That's next on Wall Street Week on Bloomberg.
For the NBA Finals is SiriusXM NBA Radio. For the Celtics, it's a chance to raise banner number 18.
Tatum with an opening right down the middle, flies in for the two-hand slam.
For the Warriors, an opportunity to deliver Steph Curry a fourth ring.
Takes a three left side, pops it good. Curry.
Here live on-site coverage as our experts break down every game-changing moment.
Book it. Nobody is beating the Golden State Warriors this year.
On Channel 86 and on the SXM app.
Everyone loves shopping online. Well, I'm going to tell you what I tell my golf buddies when they buy clubs. Stop searching for coupon codes. Download Capital One Shopping to your computer. Capital One Shopping instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Plus, it's free, and you don't even need a Capital One card to use it. That's like hitting a hole-in-one without even trying. Capital One Shopping. It's kind of genius. What's in your wallet?
Savings and available coupons vary.
DQ presents the sound of an all-star summer lineup. Leading off, the promising rookie, new Oreo Dirt Pie. On deck, the fan-favorite Girl Scout Thin Mints. Summer standouts, Drumstick with peanuts and cotton candy. And batting cleanup, it's you. With your red spoon and 6 summer blizzard flavors, official treat of MLB. All part of the new DQ All-Star Summer Blizzard lineup. DQ? Happy tastes good.
This is the Bloomberg Real Estate Report, brought to you by Fidelity. Well, home buying is so stressful these days that people are actually crying about it. Half of the home buyers surveyed by Zillow say they've been in tears at some point in the process. Better news may be right around the corner, though, because inventory is rising in some markets. Jocelyn Melkasian is realtor at La Macchia Realty. She says just wait a few months if you're trying to buy.
Inventory levels are always the higher in the fall than they are in the spring.
And Melkasian also says there are other reasons to think it might be about to get a little easier for home buyers.
The interest rates are going up, and it's a midterm election year. The last time we saw a slow fall was really the fall of 2018 when interest rates crept up, and it was a midterm election year. And I think the same is going to happen this year. So right now we're at the very, very beginning stages.
Redfin, meantime, says more than 1 in 5 sellers are already dropping prices to help close sales. And that's the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini on SiriusXM.
Because y'all means all.
Y'all means all.
Celebrate Pride Month with the Trailblazers and allies of the country music community.
On an exclusive SiriusXM channel, Country Pride.
Nashville's next generation comes together for Pride Month.
On SiriusXM 104.
For a limited time on now.
And continue listening through June on the SXM app.
Included with all trials and popular plans.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking? It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it.
Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing.
New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors. Peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners. No artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about those sounds? Those are the sounds of a new LG laundry set with Turbo Wash 3D that provides a powerful yet gentle clean in just 29 minutes, making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Shop final days ending June 8th to get an LG top or front load washer dryer set for just $778 each. Valid May 19th through June 8th. U.S. only. Gas dryer extra while supplies last. See store for details.
Seeing through the eyes of experts gives you a better view.
So let's talk about the pain trade.
And at Bloomberg, our market vision is 2020.
I am shocked by the moves that we're seeing in the rates market.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries, this is Bloomberg Radio on SiriusXM Channel 119. Now, a global news update.
One person is injured after a shooting at a hospital in North Carolina. It happened at Wayne Memorial Hospital in Goldsboro, east of Raleigh. The victim's injuries are not life-threatening. A spokesman for Wayne County said the hospital lockdown has been lifted. The suspect fled, and law enforcement knows the shooter's identity. Russia's president is blaming the U.S. and Europe for problems in the global food and energy markets. Vladimir Putin said the U.S. put lots of money into its economy during the pandemic. He insisted that drove up inflation and caused food prices to skyrocket. He also blamed Europe for not preserving contracts for natural gas supplies to various countries. Putin asserted that led to price hikes. President Biden will appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live later this week. His appearance is set for Wednesday. It comes as the Summit of Americas is happening this week in L.A. In tweeting about Biden's venture into late-night TV, Kimmel said, "It's no malarkey." And the NBA Finals are tied up 1 game apiece. Tonight, the Warriors beat the Celtics 107-88 in San Francisco. Game 3 is Wednesday in Boston. I'm Chris Coraggio.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces. Just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
What is dedication?
The thing that drives me every day as a dad is Dariana. We call him Day for short. Every day he's hungry for something, whether it's attention, affection, knowledge. And there's this huge responsibility in making sure that when he's no longer under my wing, that he's a good person. I think the advice I would give is you don't need to know all the answers. The craziest thing was believing that your dad knew everything. So as a dad, you felt like you had to know everything. You had to get everything right. It's okay to make mistakes. As long as it's coming from love, then, it kind of starts to work itself out. I want him to be able to sit back one day and go, we worked together, we did a good job.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week with David Weston from Bloomberg Radio.
This is Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston. It was another volatile week in the markets, and those jobs numbers out on Friday did not help matters one bit. And J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon this week gave us little hope for good news anytime soon.
It's a hurricane. Right now it's kind of sunny. Things are doing fine. Everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy or Sandy or Andrew or something like that. And you better brace yourself.
To help us put together the mosaic of the economy on the one hand and the markets on the other, we welcome now our special contributors, Larry Summers of Harvard and Steve Ratner of Willett Advisors, which invests the personal and philanthropic assets of Michael Bloomberg, the founder and majority shareholder of our parent company. So welcome to both of you. Larry, let's start with that. Sunny today, like on Friday, the jobs numbers were pretty sunny, a lot of jobs. At the same time, the market sort of saw a storm squall coming in because they didn't like it one bit. What did those jobs numbers tell you about where we are in the economy and particularly managing inflation?
Look, the economy's pretty strong, right now. The question is, inflation is way above any concept of target. My view has been that inflation's not going to come down to target levels or close to target levels without introducing some real slack into the economy, which means a period of very high turbulence. Whether that slack's going to come because the Fed's going to have to push interest rates very high, or whether that slack's going to come because of internal forces in the economy, inflation eroding people's incomes and so forth, that's less clear to me. But I don't think there's a path to a low inflation economy without a material period of economic slack. It could happen, but it's not the dominant probability. What we saw today was a lot of strength, and that suggests more need for interest rate hikes, and that's what was discounted into the market.
So, Steve, you're a smart investor, so speak for the smart investors. Should smart investors be actually rooting for weaker jobs numbers than what we saw this week?
Well, just to follow on Larry's point, I think his point is completely correct, but I think if you take the probability of higher interest rates being required, given today's job numbers, and obviously that was the market reaction, I think the market is way underpricing the likelihood of future interest rate hikes. It's looking at something like 7 more hikes. And that's probably some fraction of what would be required in order to get inflation down by using higher interest rates. So I don't know what whether Jamie Dimon was referring more to the real economy or more to the markets, but I would be very worried about the markets and somewhat worried about the real economy for the reasons Larry said.
Larry, are we seeing any indications yet of a slowdown in the economy that obviously the Fed has to want if they're going to get their arms around inflation?
We're seeing a little bit of indications that some firms are no longer reporting the kind of huge labor shortages that they were before. We're seeing some indications of inventory buildups, but I think overall the picture is still a very stretched economy. You know, the statistic I like to focus on goes to the labor market, and it's the ratio of vacancies to unemployment. Typically, for every 10 unemployed people, we have 6 or 7 vacancies. Right now, we have 20. The highest we've ever had before was 15. So even if there is some easing up, we've got very, very tight labor markets. And I don't think there's likely to be substantial disinflation while we have very tight labor markets.
Steve, you'll remember that Chair Powell earlier, when we weren't seeing the inflation yet, said if it comes, we've got the tools to deal with it. I wonder whether we do. We talked to Larry Fink this week, actually, and he has his own doubts. This is part of what Larry had to say.
I don't believe the Federal Reserve has the policy or the tools to do much with it right now. And I'm personally not blaming the Federal Reserve for where we are right now. But I believe most of the problems we're living with today are more policy generated and supply generated.
Steve, what he's talking about there in terms of policy generated are things like some of our trade policies, some of our policies on immigration where we're not getting as many workers, indeed energy policy. He's saying that's bigger than just a single fiscal stimulus package. And so that's not something the Fed can deal with. Are we concerned they don't have the tools they need to get the job done?
Well, I would be a little concerned, but for slightly different reasons. I think some of those policy issues are certainly legitimate, but I don't think the question, for example, of immigration is really what's driving our inflationary situation at the moment, or really would make that much of a material difference in any near or medium term scenario.
We're going to have much more with Larry Summers of Harvard and Steve Ratner of Willett Advisors. We're going to talk about, among other things, greenwashing, very much in the news this week. This is Wall Street Week on Bloomberg.
SiriusXM presents The Sounds of Summer with Discovery Plus. A sonic road trip across North America. Featuring Discovery Plus stars Trixie Mattel, Josh Gates, and more as your celebrity tour guides. This week, things heat up as we head to Miami. The Sounds of Summer, available now on the SXM app. And tell your friends and family their SiriusXM radios are on free. Now through June 6th. Visit SiriusXM.com/listen free to see what's on.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
Where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about those sounds? Those are the sounds of a brand new ice maker dropping cubes into a fresh glass of water, making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Final days ends June 8th to save up to 30% off select appliances. Valid May 19th through June 8th. Gas range extra. While supplies last. See store for details.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. If you are traveling this summer, expect to pay a lot more for your car rental.
You'll probably see rates, which are already pretty high, you'll probably see them go up even more.
David Welch wrote the story for Bloomberg News, and he says while there is more demand, car rental companies have fewer vehicles.
They're getting cars, but they're getting about a third the amount that they used to get from the car companies. There's the semiconductor shortage.
For customers, that means no immediate relief.
The next 2 quarters are really the busiest quarters of the year for car rental companies, and rates generally rise just because there's more demand.
And with cars in short supply, rising demand is bringing back car rental profits.
Everybody is saying that they kind of like this new normal. Both the automakers, car dealers, and rental car companies are running their business with lower inventory, doing less discounting, and just getting fatter profits.
Both Hertz and Avis say their rates rose at least 25% in the first quarter compared with the same quarter of last year. I'm Charlie Pellet. This is Bloomberg on Sirius XM.
I'm Bob Crawford, historian and bassist for the Avett Brothers. In the next episode of my audio documentary, Concerts of Change, we hear how Bono went from rock star to global humanitarian activist, featuring President George W. Bush, Bob Geldof, and Bono himself.
You know, you can work with someone you disagree with if the one thing you do agree with is important enough.
You can hear the full series of SiriusXM volumes Concerts of Change, the soundtrack of human rights, right now on demand on the SXM app, free for most subscribers.
At New York Presbyterian, our cardiologists and cardiac surgeons are at the top of their game so you can stay on top of yours. Stay amazing. New York Presbyterian. We treat the most cardiac patients in the Northeast, according to the U.S. News & World Report 2021-22 rankings.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking? It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it.
Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing.
New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors. Peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners. No artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
Free Kids Workshops are back in stores at the Home Depot. On the first Saturday of every month from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., bring your little ones to a local Home Depot for a hands-on learning experience that kids love. Find more kid-friendly projects and kids workshop kits at homedepot.com/kids. For 25 years, the Home Depot has been building confident, future doers with its free kids workshops. The Home Depot, how doers get more done. While supplies last, U.S. only.
Seeing through the eyes of experts gives you a better view.
So let's talk about the pain trade.
And at Bloomberg, our market vision is 2020.
I am shocked by the moves that we're seeing in the rates market.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries, this is Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 119. Now, a global news update.
One person is injured after a shooting at a hospital in North Carolina. It happened at Wayne Memorial Hospital in Goldsboro, east of Raleigh. The victim's injuries are not life-threatening. A spokesman for Wayne County said the hospital lockdown has been lifted. The suspect fled, and law enforcement knows the shooter's identity. Russia's president is blaming the U.S. and Europe for problems in the global food and energy markets. Vladimir Putin said the U.S. put lots of money into its economy during the pandemic. He insisted that drove up inflation and caused food prices to skyrocket. He also blamed Europe for not preserving contracts for natural gas supplies to various countries. Putin asserted that led to price hikes. President Biden will appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live later this week. His appearance is set for Wednesday. It comes as the Summit of Americas is happening this week in L.A. In tweeting about Biden's venture into late-night TV, Kimmel said, "It's no malarkey." And the NBA Finals are tied up 1 game apiece. Tonight, the Warriors beat the Celtics 107-88 in San Francisco. Game 3 is Wednesday in Boston. I'm Chris Coraggio.
This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week with David Weston from Bloomberg Radio.
I don't want to be in the environmental police. I think it's wrong to ask the private sector to tell all the entire society we have to move forward. And I have no problem in doing scope 1 and 2, but we've always said scope 3 is forcing big companies, banks, and asset managers to be the environmental police.
That was Larry Fink of BlackRock talking to us this week about the plight of ESG, or at least the E part of ESG investing, after some senior executives lost their jobs over managing the hot area, at least once hot area of ESG investing. Still with us are Larry Summers of Harvard and Steve Radner of Will Advisors. Steve, I want to start with you because we've talked about ESG investing before. I've taken you to say, in principle, sure, particularly on the environmental part of it, climate, absolutely, but there aren't that many opportunities. What are we seeing in ESG investing right now? Because it was very, very hot, and now there's a lot of questioning of it.
I think it's still certainly very hot in certain circles anyway. As you may remember from our conversations, I've always been somewhat skeptical of it as an investment tool. If you want to look at ESG principles as a shareholder because you believe that's what's right for the country, for your company, for yourself, for anybody, you're a shareholder, you're an owner, it's capitalism, you have a right to say, vote, do whatever you think is right. But if you look at it as on the theory that somehow you're going to produce superior investing returns by investing alongside of ESG guidelines or restrictions or whatever you want to call them, I'm deeply skeptical. I've seen little to no evidence to suggest that that's true. At best, it's kind of a push. At worst, it may be counterproductive. I can give you an anecdote, which is a company like Unilever, which was way out in front on ESG issues. Maybe they got distracted, maybe they didn't, but they way underperformed. Now they've got an activist on their board, and so on. And so I just think you have to separate ESG as something you want to do as a shareholder for something that you think is going to actually make the company more money.
Larry, where is the line between ESG, or let's stick with environmental for present purpose, because I think it's hard to quantify, at least for me, on the S and the G part, but environmental. Where's the line between just ESG investing on the one hand, on the other hand, really being concerned about long-term risks, because there certainly are long-term risks for companies based on the environment and climate?
Look, I think that people should make investments largely on the basis of what the ultimate prospects are. I think the problem comes when people who really have an environmental motivation try to attach an economic motivation and make economic arguments that aren't really very strong. I think there's been a whole movement in the central banking community to start focusing on what they call climate risks as if those were central systemic financial risks. And I don't think the evidence has ever been produced that genuine concern about systemic financial risk of the kind we had in 2008 during the crisis, of the kind that reared its head in the immediate aftermath of COVID, that is something that is likely to come from climate issues, seems to me to be a quite remote risk. And I think a lot of the enthusiasm came from people who couldn't legislate things about climate through the front door, and so they want to try to legislate them through the back door through central bank regulatory policies. And I'm not really very enthusiastic about all of that. And more generally, I think some of what little evidence there is of positive returns to environmental investing, I don't think reflects so much that it's a way of picking companies that are going to outperform. It's the fact that this was a growing movement. And so first companies that met certain green tests had a little bit of green investment, and then a lot more green investment poured into them, so their stock prices went up. But it was really driven by the pressure from the investors, market price pressure from the investors, not by anything about the underlying fundamental realities of the company. Well, I think there's also a danger. I think there's a danger in this, which is that I think many in the business community, or at least some in the business community, celebrate these processes of their own making pronouncements of one kind or other and encouraging various kinds of investments. And they think that if they make enough noise in that direction, they can avoid strong public policies. My sense is that this is not going to be resolved without strong public policies, and a lot of this business cheerleading has a bit of a subtle motive to suggest that the problem is being addressed without the need for strong public policies.
So, Steve, just last word to you here. Larry raises an interesting prospect. Is it possible that some of the rush to ESG investing, because we saw a lot of people saying they're outperforming, ESG investing is outperforming the S&P 500. Now it seems to reverse. Was it a rising tide that is now going out? As I said, I have not seen a lot of evidence that ESG investing has ever outperformed or is outperforming other ways of investing. I think as a matter of pure
investing theory, you could argue that if you constrain the kinds of investments you're willing to make based on a set of criteria that aren't necessarily directly related to profitability, all things being equal, your returns should be lower. And again, I'm not advocating going out and investing in a lot of companies that are environmentally dangerous or polluting simply because you might be able to make more money. I'm simply saying that you have to be careful about how many different boxes you try to check in the course of investing. But I just want to say one last thing, because I think Larry touched on a really important broad point. I think as a society, we're looking to other institutions, whether it's the Federal Reserve or central banks, or whether it's corporations or what have you, to solve problems that Washington is not willing to take on. And I think we need to push back in the other direction and say it's not the Fed's job to solve every problem. It's not companies' jobs to solve every problem. The executive branch, the legislative branch have to step up and get some stuff done here.
Yeah, I suspect, Larry, you'd agree with that, just briefly.
Yes, absolutely. I think that Steve's making exactly the point that I'm making. I would add that I think some of the motivation for some of the happy talk in the private sector may be to discourage public efforts, which they don't want to see. That's why I was kind of glad to see Larry Fink signaling that he thought strong public policies were necessary.
Okay, thank you so much to our special contributors, Larry Summers and Steve Ratner. Finally, one more thought. Does the Thucydides trap apply to movies? We have no shortage of conflict these days over whether that massive fiscal stimulus was really necessary.
It is nothing short of preposterous that the central bank is still, as we speak, growing its balance sheet.
The American Rescue Plan played a central role in driving strong growth throughout 2021.
We have conflicts over politics, which Ray Dalio says inflation makes only worse.
We are going to have more conflict. We're going to have more inflation. Inflation causes domestic political conflict.
And goodness knows conflicts over Ukraine, with Europe ramping up the pressure on Russia this week by curtailing oil imports.
We could see a reduction of Russian oil into the EU of 90% by the end of the year.
While Russia retaliates by cutting off natural gas supplies. But in the long run, the biggest conflict of them all is likely to be the contest between the United States and China, as the former seeks to maintain its #1 position in the world, while the latter nips at its heels. The trap that the Kennedy School's Graham Allison warns about in his book on the Thucydides trap.
The first proposition is to recognize that because of structural conditions that are the consequence of a rising China that is actually threatening to displace the ruling U.S., that because of this Thucydidean dynamic, the future will be extremely dangerous.
Thucydides may have been a visionary, but when he was writing his Greek history over 2,000 years ago, even he could not have anticipated that the first skirmishes in the conflict might be fought on the big screen. But that's what we saw this week with the blockbuster opening of Top Gun: Maverick, Tom Cruise's best premiere ever, raking in some $124 million over the Memorial Day weekend, which could have made some good money for China's Tencent. That is, if it hadn't pulled its financing for the project, concerned that the movie's glowing portrayal of the U.S. military might just upset the government in Beijing. Until now, studios didn't want to mess with China as it moves toward becoming the largest movie market in the world, something Disney's former CEO Bob Iger talked about when his first Star Wars movie was premiering.
It's the #2 movie market in the world. It will become the #1 movie market in the world in a few years, sooner than everybody anticipated. That's a huge opportunity that did not exist a few years ago.
But things may just be changing. Could it be a coincidence that in the final cut of Top Gun, there was what appeared to be an edit that cannot make Beijing happy?
In the Top Gun sequel, Maverick is wearing a jacket with the Taiwan flag on the back. There was applause apparently in Taiwan when this was shown at the premiere, but this movie will not be shown in China. Does this highlight growing tensions between China and Taiwan?
This movie will certainly be an irritation in the mix of all of that.
Irritation indeed. But as Tom Cruise says in the movie, we'll deal with the consequences later.
The end is inevitable, Maverick. Your kind is headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir. But not today.
That does it for this episode of Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston. This is Bloomberg. See you next week.
His signature funk, slow jams, and psychedelic rock made him music royalty. Celebrate Black Music Month with the return of the Prince Channel. All his hits, plus live performances, including music from the just-released Prince and the Revolution Live album. On the Prince Channel, Sirius XM 105 all week. And continue listening through June on the SXM app.
Virginia is for eaters and drinkers, all kinds of eaters and drinkers. For oyster shuckers and slurpers. Winery samplers are all-day wine drinkers. Brewery hoppers and distillery sippers. For those who order grits and those who order cheese grits. We all know what the right way to order is. For barbecue triers who turn into finger lickers and meat off the bone suckers. All right, all this talk of food is making me hungry. I gotta go get some mac and cheese. Like I was saying, Virginia is for all sorts of food lovers. So come love it for yourself.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking?
It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it.
Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing.
New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors. Peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners. No artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
You can't get much for $5 these days. Unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT. Plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink. All for just $5. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're gonna feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii.
Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 119.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Middle East. Your top stories this morning. WTI passes $120 a barrel as Saudi Arabia signals confidence in demand by increasing prices to Asia by more than expected. Meanwhile, France is talking to the UAE about supplies as it seeks alternatives to Russian energy. A big week in terms of central bank action and data, with the Fed's QT starting on Wednesday, an ECB rate decision on Thursday, and the latest US CPI reading on Friday. Bitcoin pushes above $30,000, but miners are beginning to sell tokens they've hoarded to cover rising costs amid slowing industry growth. And Boris Johnson is booed at the Platinum Jubilee as a key ally says the British leader sees rebels within his own party triggering a vote on his leadership. As soon as this week, we have the details as it just goes 8 a.m. across the Emirates. Very warm welcome to the show. I'm Menace Cranny in Dubai. You have a huge amount to grapple with. Oil prices surged to the highest in 3 months, and so the Saudis took their opportunity to raise those prices to one of their biggest markets, $6.50 over the Amman Dubai price, the second highest level ever. Now, the debate is this: as oil prices rise, you have a Monday morning narrative about mobility in Shanghai and Beijing rising. That is the ultimate driving force for the market. Now, that's Euro NOK. We'll come back to the cross rates in a moment at the top. This is actually oil. This is actually the chart of oil that you have there. So what you have is Iran. What would What would Joe Biden tolerate? Would he let a little bit of Iranian oil float around the market? Citigroup say sanctions will be delayed. They raised their price to $113. And at the same time, Vitol say, well, the U.S. may just tolerate a little bit more Iranian oil. To the equity market story this morning, in terms of the risk, we go into QT this week, and the risk is this: that tech and crypto are going to be under the most amount of pressure. Let's get to Jules. She's standing by in Singapore with the very latest on the markets. Jules.
Hey, Manus, we are seeing a little bit of mixed movement, but starting to see some more positivity in the afternoon session. A couple of markets, the likes of Australia and India, under pressure, but you can see Japan there among the front runners as we kickstart this new trading week, and seeing a lot of upside coming through in the Hang Seng Tech Index as well. That's after we had a holiday at the end of last week, but we saw that gauge, the Golden Dragon Index, rise about 2% over the last two trading sessions. China's markets have been fluctuating in and out of positive and negative territory today, but on the lunch break up by about 1.5% as we start to see some easing of restrictions coming through there in Beijing. And we're watching bonds bid a little in Australia after an inflation gauge came to a near 14-year high. Let's have a look at my chart, because this is all, of course, ahead of the RBA tomorrow, where we are expecting an out-of-cycle rate hike. This would be a back-to-back rate hike coming through from the RBA, and a lot of economists suggesting that we could see 40 basis points as the central bank really tries to grapple with this inflation picture that the new Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has said could significantly get worse in terms of price pressures. So the headline inflation read from the Melbourne Institute inflation gauge rising 1.1% month on month. That's an annual pace of 4.8%, continuing to show, like so many economies, that we are seeing price pressures really start to hit. Manus.
Jules, thank you very much. Yeah, it's going to be a big week in terms of those inflationary prints and how the central banks react. Jules, we'll see you through the morning. Well, oil extends its gains, as I've been saying, to the highest in 3 months, as Saudi Arabia signals confidence that the demand outlook will move for an increase in price of crude across Asia, a little bit more than expected. Let's bring in Stephen Sochinsky. He's in Singapore. So, Stephen, here we are. We're looking at oil at a 3-month high, and the Saudis step in. I mean, last week the narrative was they incrementally added to the OPEC Plus supply, but not enough to change the dial. And here they are raising prices. What do you take away from that?
I think it's really a look on China. You know, Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus for a long time have been saying that they didn't want to add more barrels to the market because the Chinese demand situation wasn't very clear. Their COVID zero policy just absolutely destroyed demand. And Shanghai and Beijing, they were looking quite bad just a few weeks ago. But now you have Shanghai opening back up. You have the government pushing for Shanghai industries to open up. Today you have Beijing allowing restaurants to open up for citizens, even theaters. The situation in China is improving. And I think when you take that into account, you can see that Saudi Arabia is expecting that perhaps Chinese demand will bounce back as well. And once you have Asia's largest crude consumer jumping back into the market, perhaps buying some cargoes, perhaps increasing run rates at refineries, you're going to see a much tighter picture than we had before. And it was already quite tight. So that's likely the reason for that. And as well, you look at the OPEC Plus agreement to add 50% more for July and August. But will they be able to reach that? Because Russia's part of that agreement, and the EU is banning Russian imports. So it's not very clear whether Russia or other members will be able to hit the targets. All that together is a bullish element for oil, and that's why we're up over the last few sessions.
Yeah, and the money managers building up their net long positions, the highest in 3 months. Stephen, the other side story, if you like, is that France, in discussions with the UAE, they need to find substantial, concrete alternatives to Russian energy. How progressed are those talks? What do we know?
We know that they've had some initial discussions. You know, they mentioned they threw UAE out as one of the countries that they're talking to, but it doesn't seem like anything concrete has been decided there quite yet. The fact of the matter is, France is going to have to cut their imports of Russian oil by roughly more than 90%, and that's a very large chunk of what they purchase, and they're going to need to find at least somebody temporarily, and that's what France, one of their ministers, signaled over the weekend is UAE could potentially help fill that gap. They're also looking at ways to save energy consumption, ways to boost renewables, ways to conserve, oil and diesel and gasoline. There are a lot of options on the table, and that's not just what France is going to do. A lot of other countries across the EU are going to have to find alternative sources of oil as they really begin to turn the vessels away from Russia, and as they really begin to curb their imports from that country.
Okay, Stephen, let's see how the oil market reacts. Of course, how much will Biden tolerate of Iranian oil that is floating quietly around the world? Stephen Straczynski in Singapore. On the oil markets, the Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, says it may make sense to lift tariffs on some Chinese goods as a way to tame inflation. Speaking on CNN, Raimondo said President Biden is open to any good idea that will help American families.
Steel and aluminum, we've decided to keep some of those tariffs because we need to protect American workers and we need to protect our steel industry. That's a matter of national security. There are other products, household goods, bicycles, etc., and it may make sense.
Let's get to Bruce Einhorn in Hong Kong. So, Bruce, Raimondo going on the tape. This is, I suppose, juggling the balls of keeping some of the Trump-era tariffs in place, protect American jobs, with the opportunity for inflation. Political swaggering or a real new narrative?
Well, Manus, this is all in reference to $300 billion. Tariffs on $300 billion worth of Chinese imports. These all date back to the Trump administration. And, at the time the Trump administration imposed these tariffs, critics said, one, these aren't going to be very effective in reducing the Chinese trade surplus with the U.S., and two, they're going to be inflationary. So here we are, inflation is raging in the U.S. So people like Commerce Secretary Raimondo are saying, let's consider getting rid of some of the tariffs on things like bicycles, on clothing, on shoes, other things. When she refers to the steel and aluminum tariffs, it's important to point out that that's not just on imports from China. That also applies to other places, including the EU. There's still a long way to go before there's any decision on this. One big issue is, as U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai has raised, the tariffs are useful leverage in negotiations with China. So does the Biden administration just want to lift them on its own, or do they want to do this as part of a negotiation and get something from the Chinese in return? So we're still waiting to see where this is all going to go. Manus?
Bruce, it's all in the art of negotiation. Bruce Einhorn there with the very latest on Gina Raimondo's comments on the Sunday shows. Now, the Bitcoin miners are beginning to sell tokens to cover burgeoning costs amid the slowdown in the industry's growth. Bloomberg's Joanna Ossinger joins me now. Joanna, talk me through this. What are the Bitcoin miners actually doing with their tokens?
So, Manus, they're moving their tokens from their wallets into exchanges. And so that isn't a perfect measure, but it has been the biggest increase May was since January. And it's about 196,000 tokens. So it is a lot. And if they're moved onto exchanges, the reasoning is they might be selling them. Of course, there are other things they can do. But still, it does look like they're doing a little bit more with their tokens, trying to sell them to keep operations going. They may have bought expensive machines when Bitcoin was back up near $69,000 in November, and just now the machines are coming due and they have to pay for them. So there is kind of this delayed effect, and the miners aren't exactly doing well stock-wise. Some of them are down, say, 70% year to date, like Riot and Marathon, when the NASDAQ is down about 23%. So miners are kind of struggling, and you could see maybe they're selling some things to maintain operations through this time when Bitcoin is a little bit lower.
So what's put the miners in this particular position?
Basically, that if you were planning out your year, say in the fourth quarter, and Bitcoin was a lot higher, you could say, oh, well, maybe we'll really expand and keep going with this. But now Bitcoin is not at $65,000, $69,000. It's at $30,000, and it's really stuck at $30,000. As you said earlier, it's trying to move above $31,000, but it's significantly lower. So if you were making business plans based on a higher Bitcoin price, it's a pretty tough situation right now. And they're trying to make a go of it. But definitely, as these risk assets overall are decreasing, as the Federal Reserve is hiking rates, it has been tougher for the whole crypto complex, and miners are feeling that.
Well, certainly, and some of the heat may come out of the property market here on the back of a materially lower Bitcoin. Joanna, thank you very much. Joanna Ossinger there, our team leader on cryptocurrencies. And let's check in on the first word, news from around the world. Juliet Sally's back with me from Singapore. Jules.
Manus, North Korea fired 8 short-range ballistic missiles on Sunday, pushing it to a record 31 launches this year. The latest test comes after the US and South Korea held naval drills in waters off Okinawa. Officials from the US, South Korea and Japan denounced the launches as an outright violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Beijing is rolling back more COVID-19 restrictions. The city will resume public transport in most districts from Monday, allowing workers to return to offices and restaurants to restart dine-in services. Parks and entertainment facilities will also reopen with capacity capped at 75%. The loosening comes after most Beijing districts achieved 0 new community cases for 7 consecutive days. Australia says one of its surveillance planes was cut off by a Chinese fighter jet in international airspace over the South China Sea. Canberra's defence officials say the manoeuvre threatened the safety of the Australian aircraft and its crew. The incident happened on May 26th and is the latest encounter between the two countries' militaries following another incident in February. And Bloomberg has learned that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson expects rebel MPs in his own party to trigger a leadership vote in the coming days. A source says the Tory members may be on the cusp of getting the letters needed to force the confidence vote. Calls for Johnson to step down have intensified since a report was released on illegal parties at Downing Street during the pandemic. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg. Manus.
Jules, thank you very much. Still ahead, we speak to Franklin Templeton's Dina Kronfall about the region's fixed income markets amid elevated crude prices. But up next, we're going to get a broad perspective on global risk from Gulf Investment Corporation's Raffaele Bertone as we look ahead to the U.S. inflation print later this week. This is Bloomberg.
Before and after the pandemic.
Is it driven by politics or by science?
That may be how we keep track of our lives from here on out.
What do you think the political effects of that impatience will be?
And through it all, there's been Bloomberg.
We begin on Capitol Hill.
The most accurate business, world, and healthcare news before and after.
The fundamentals do not justify this price action.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Would you say it's more important to gather information fast, or to have it first, or to be the most accurate?
They can really move the needle when it comes to programs.
The point in all this surely is the level of support you'll get from companies for this.
What if you don't have to choose?
It also has enormous importance for the labor market.
How do they get ahead of different administrations?
We see this move towards digital currencies.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. We used to take our freedom of movement for granted. Not anymore.
It's not just the people who work for the airlines.
And it's natural to feel grateful for the things that kept you going.
Does America have a chance to lose our advantage?
Can we get to herd immunity fast enough so that we'll be in good shape?
But really, we were just doing our jobs.
Oxford University is starting a study on patients who've recovered from COVID.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. What's the difference between you and your competition?
What's your vision in this relationship?
We're guessing one thing is that you are better informed.
European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde had this to say.
Actually, we're not guessing.
The realism of this is tangible.
Up to the moment news.
Some of the biggest states could see most of the money.
Expert analysis.
Does that mean you're focusing on banks and other financials?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Europe definitely felt more likely to be heading into a recession than you see in the US. The US story is, as we all know, is much more about rates. With this is a recession. It's certainly not our base case that there will be, but it's not easy to avoid either.
The Citigroup Chief Executive Officer, Jane Fraser, weighing in on the recession risk. Meanwhile, Lloyd Blankfein, the Goldman Sachs Senior Chairman, says people should dial back on the negativity. He tweeted over the weekend, "If I'm managing a big company, of course I'm prepping for the worst, but the economy is starting from a strong place, with more jobs than takers, and is adjusting to higher rates. Riskier times, but may yet land softly." Well, it's the great debate, isn't it? Raffaele Bertoni is the head of debt capital markets at Gulf Investment Corporation with me. So here's the debate, isn't it? Jane Fraser makes it very clear. Europe more likely than the US for a recession. But I'm drawn to Blankfein. His warning just a couple of weeks ago was a very, very high risk of recession. Look, I can roll off a number of people who are worried. You're a bond trader, a veteran bond trader. So what we need to try and understand is, what type of slowdown do you expect to see? What is a soft landing?
In my view, the soft landing is something where the US can avoid a recession next year. Obviously, we are coming from very high numbers of GDP growth over the past few years. The slowdown is happening, and there are clear signs that the slowdown will continue into next year. The soft landing is the U.S. economy able to avoid the recession, which is...
So that's the technical 2 quarters of negative growth. But perhaps when you look at the data from Friday, where wages dropped slightly year on year, you had a little bit more in the participation rate. Rick Reeder at BlackRock did an interview with us, and he said, look, this is the last good reading you're going to get for a while. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there are signs that wage inflation should slow down. Participation rate will continue to increase, and also the numbers of new jobs will probably go down. The economy is slowing down. We will have, obviously, a weaker job market going forward.
So translate that then to the bond market, because we're just about to embark on QT. So I want to take what you've just said and how that translates to 10-year yields in the first instance, and then you can cherry on the top QT. But let's start the discussion with a soft landing to the bond market. Do we trade around 310? 290, are we in that band, or do bonds break higher?
Regarding the short end of the curve, we think that a lot is already priced in.
Okay.
And that's where we see the opportunity for the fixed income market, not only for governments, but in general for credit market as well. The problem is the long end of the curve, because the curve is quite flat at the moment. And the market is not pricing the quantitative tightening, which, in my view, it's an important factor that we need to take in consideration. We always said that the quantitative easing was a way to borrow growth from the future. Quantitative tightening is going to be exactly the opposite. So we are going to pay back what we borrowed in the past.
So that sounds like a hell of a warning. We're going to pay back what we borrowed in the past, which is fair enough. So extrapolate QT to yield for me.
In terms of yield, we think that we will go well above the 3% for the 10 years. Very slowly. I think the Fed will manage market expectations in order to avoid any strong sell-off in the short term. But the pressure is there, it's going to be there. And buyers of bond at the moment, especially on the long end, are few.
But we know that markets tend to overreach. So once they grapple with what QT is, where does the bond market extrapolate to? Does it take yields to 3.5% to 4%? Can you see that kind of an extreme move in the near term?
In the near term, it's possible. And again, I think the Fed is well prepared to manage expectation, and this repricing of the long end of the curve will happen slowly.
We were looking at WIRP, which is the probability of another 50 basis point hike in September. There's all this ruckus about a September pause, which has been walked back by a number of people. How do you see the progression for rates? Do you see the probability of a third 50 basis point hike in September?
Yeah, the probability is there. Our view is that the Fed will try to reach the 3% neutral rate as soon as possible. The Fed must be credible and therefore cannot blink during this process and must keep inflation expectation well anchored.
So the correlation, you've looked at real rates to PEs, and you would say the progression would go from -1 to plus 0.35%, and stocks have correlated and traded down. So it's always hard to call a bottom. I'm not going to put you on the spot for that, but do you begin to see pockets of value in equity then? Do you think that narrative, Tina, will creep back in, and will they begin to buy these kind of dips?
No, I don't believe so, because now we have an alternative. We have some opportunities in the fixed income market, and with the reprice of bonds and higher rates, we are going to have the alternative to equities. The problem with equities is obviously we had the reprice of the multiples because of the increase in real rates. Now the big question is earning growth. If the economy will slow down, obviously we can expect a slowdown of
so just very briefly then, because we're under a bit of pressure on time, in terms of Tara, my alternative, is it in IG or high yield?
On the short end, a little bit of both. Even emerging market on a tactical basis, after the sell-off we had since the beginning of the year, there are some pockets of value.
Okay, certainly the equity story has bounced nicely in the EM space, and it has outperformed. Rafaela, thank you very much for being with us this morning. His calls on the bond market, and perhaps the last good set of numbers in the US jobs reports for a while. Rafaela Bertoni, Head of Debt to Capital Markets at Gulf Investment Corporation. Plenty more ahead on your Monday edition of Daybreak Middle East. This is Bloomberg.
If you're the kind of person who gets nervous when there's no news,
what's the administration's message to progressive members of the House?
Then consider this your relaxation zone.
We're all looking to travel reopening.
The latest business and financial news.
Doesn't that necessarily help your investments?
Why did it have the opposite effect?
For those who really, really need it.
That's how we knew that things were coming undone.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. When was the moment you discovered that you were meant for the business world?
Have you been getting a lot of inquiries from employers?
And then you started looking for the best sources of information.
Technology is challenging the regulators.
Doctors use kind of a virtual reality look.
I feel like the world is courting Elon Musk.
Which is how you got here.
How are other bankers restricted now?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Take a not-so-random walk through hot topics in markets and finance. Listen to Odd Lots, a weekly Bloomberg podcast hosted by Joe Weisenthal and Tracy Alloway. Odd Lots explores everything from how the Seinfeld TV show can teach you about economics to why the Federal Reserve blundered by letting Lehman Brothers fail. The Odd Lots podcast, available every Monday on the Bloomberg Terminal, Bloomberg.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and whatever app you use to browse podcasts.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Let's get a quick check on the latest business flash headlines from around the world. Elon Musk says Tesla is increasing total headcount. Just days after telling employees he plans to reduce salaried staff by 10%. Musk said in a tweet that the number of salaried workers will be fairly flat, while overall job numbers will rise. According to Reuters, Musk was planning to cut staff because he had, quote, a super bad feeling about the economy.
Tesla shares fell in 10% on Friday. The London Metal Exchange is facing legal proceedings over nickel trades cancelled on March 8th. That's according to a statement from its parent, Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing. Elliott Associates and Elliott International allege the decision was unlawful. LME management say the claim is without merit and will vigorously contest it. And Apple is set to hold an annual developers event later, ushering in new operating systems for its devices, but its future headset is expected to overshadow all announcements. Apple is not expected to debut its mixed reality headset, however. It could give a few hints about what eventually will come. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Quick snapshot of equities this morning. I think it's the China mobility narrative that's driving some of the upward momentum. You're looking at stocks, of course, which sold off for an 8th week out of 9 last week. And it's interesting that Elon Musk story took 10% off the value of Tesla, but you are looking at equity markets just a little bit higher this morning. We've done the MLive survey, and the consensus is no shock. Nearly 50% think that tech and crypto will be the most exposed when we go into QT this year. This is Bloomberg.
The arrival of summer means crisp linens, outrageous tans, and the buttery soft sounds of Yacht Rock Radio. Set sail with the CEOs of Smooth, Loggins, McDonald, Skaggs, and more. Yacht Rock Radio, docking at Channel 14 for the summer, and always on the SXM app.
Virginia isn't for one type of person. Virginia is for road trippers. Are we there yeters? Mountain hikers and dock sitters because they're not active hikers. People who are kayakers. People who are not kayakers. Campsite campers and horseback riders. Wow, there's a lot to fit in here. Flatwater lovers, beach suntanners, hole-in-the-earth explorers, and Shenandoah Valleyers. Should I keep going here? Well, you get the idea. Because Virginia is for all sorts of lovers. So come love it for yourself.
Hurry into Mattress Firm. For a limited time, save up to $500 when you get a king bed for the price of a queen or a queen for a twin. Plus, get a free adjustable base with qualifying Sealy purchases, up to a $499 value. Or get up to 60% off America's top-rated brands, like Sealy Queen mattresses starting at $279.99 or Sleepy's at $169.99. In stock for fast delivery, only at Mattress Firm. Restrictions apply. See store or mattressfirm.com for details.
Oh, hey, Sarah. What are you drinking? It's new Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. It's got 85% less sugar than the regular sweet tea, but it still has all the taste. Here, try it. Oh, wow. This is delicious. In fact, it tastes so good, I feel like singing. New Pure Leaf Lower Sugar Iced Tea. Now available in 3 new subtly sweet flavors. Peach, lemon, and black tea. No artificial sweeteners. No artificial flavors. No is beautiful.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Middle East. Your top stories this morning. WTI passes $120 a barrel as Saudi Arabia signals confidence in demand by increasing prices to Asia by more than expected. Meanwhile, France is talking to the UAE about supplies as it seeks alternatives to Russian energy. A big week ahead in terms of central bank action, with the Fed's QT starting on Wednesday, ECB rate decision on Thursday, and the latest US CPI reading on Friday. Bitcoin pushes above $30,000, but the miners are beginning to sell tokens they've hoarded to cover rising costs amid slowing industry growth. Boris Johnson is booed at the Platinum Jubilee. The key allies say the British leader sees rebels within his own party triggering a vote on his leadership as soon as this week. We have the details. Markets are moving. Julia Sally's in charge of the board in Singapore. Apparently, we're bullish again on China. She can confirm or deny. Jules.
We certainly are, Manus. In fact, the CSI 300 at its highest since mid-April as Beijing starts to roll back some of the COVID restrictions. So hopefully this move towards further normality is giving a little bit of boost to investor sentiment today. You're also seeing that reflected in the Japanese market on that reopening theme. A couple of markets out of action today, including South Korea, New Zealand, Malaysia, but generally we are seeing upside of around 0.2%. There has been a little bit of fluctuation in some of the other markets, though, in the Australian market down by about 1/3%. We had another hot inflation read coming through there, this one from the Melbourne Institute, ahead of tomorrow's RBA decision, and that gauge actually showed inflationary pressures are at a near 14-year high. We heard from the new Treasurer as well, telling Australians to prepare for further price pressures. You've got the yield on Australia's 10-year note there down by about 1.3 basis points. UBS, though, meanwhile saying you should buy the Aussie dollar. And when we're looking at some of the other assets, we are seeing a little bit of a stronger yuan today, 6.65, and that stronger yen as well, not really impeding, though, the upward momentum you're seeing in Japanese equities today. Manus.
Jules, keeping an eye on the Aussie dollar. Keep an eye on the crosses there for you. Jules, rounding everything up in Singapore. Back to our region now. We've just had new data on the activity from Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Qatar. That came out yesterday. Simone Foxman's tracking the data from Doha. Simone, good to see you this morning. So what do you think the key takeaways are?
Two things for me, Manus. One, the stark divergence between the economic fate of Egypt and Gulf countries. Egypt, as we've been talking about, is so incredibly infected by these rising commodity prices. And the second storyline for me is also what's happening in Qatar, because we are just seeing a dramatic surge in non-oil activity here. First, to Egypt, we're looking at the 18th consecutive month of contraction in economic activity. Producers there saying input cost inflation is at its highest in 6 months, and this is partly because of those rising commodity prices as well as the dollar surge. If we look to the much more favorable story, however, we're looking at Qatar. We are seeing really actually a boost in manufacturing. That might not seem obvious considering we have all this excitement around the World Cup later this year. That's also indicative of what we saw in the services sector, what we saw in retail and wholesale. In fact, the issue here is that although hiring is at the fastest near record pace, companies simply can't hire enough people quickly enough. And so maybe that is actually putting a damper on already record PMI levels.
Yeah, I mean, that's a global story, and whether that changes. But of course, it's much harder in the GCC in terms of drawing that migrant labour perhaps in. Let's talk about the inflation story, because that's the other side of the coin, and it's certainly one of intrigue in Turkey. What have we got? What's going on in Turkey?
Yeah, intrigue at Turkstat, which is the organization responsible for publishing inflation data. We saw this second resignation of a very senior official. This one, the head of the Consumer Price Index calculation, just over the past couple of days, and he actually resigned before the May print came out on Friday, which was 73.5% year-on-year rise in prices. Analysts, I mean, we've seen this massive number in inflation, right? But analysts are actually concerned that officials are understating the true value of inflation. This could be why we're seeing continued weakness in the Turkish lira this morning. In fact, we're at 16.5 roughly to the US dollar. And if we maintain this level, this will be the weakest close ever for the lira against the US dollar. Yes, we did see slightly weaker numbers in December on an intraday basis, but that would be a stunning development if this weakness that we see today continues to hold, Manus.
And politically, Simone, let's just close off with the potential visit by Biden to the region. It sounds as if that's been pushed back a little bit.
Yeah, pushed back from late June, which was the initial expectation, to July. This according to a report by NBC News. Unclear exactly where Biden will go, but the key question is, does he visit Saudi Arabia and does he meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman? The latest lines, the latest we've heard from President Biden is that he has no direct plans to visit Saudi Arabia, but that Saudi officials, if he meets with Arab officials and goes on this trip overall, would likely to be among those Arab officials that he does meet. We're also watching some reports out. This is sort of an interesting political story as well about the potential for the U.S. to look the other way on Venezuelan and Iranian crude exports. All of these things, both the visit as well as the potentially looking the other way on these exports that are sanctioned, may have an impact as we look to oil trading today.
Okay, Simone, thank you very much. Very strange wording coming through there from the White House in terms of the potential for a visit. Simone, thank you. We'll speak to you through the morning. Simone Froxman there at the Qatar Financial Centre in Doha. Well, the ongoing geopolitical turbulence in Europe, higher oil prices, as we've seen this morning at a 3-month high, they continue to directly benefit the GCC. My next guest says that after a broad-based correction, fixed income is now more attractive as an opportunity for total returns. Dina Kronfall is the CIO for Global Sukuk and MENA Fixed Income for Franklin Templeton. Wary duration hunters, you could take a smack before it's all said and done. Dino, good to see you.
Good morning, Manus.
You sent through a lovely chart, which I think puts it very much in context, which is Sukuks, GCC, emerging market bonds and global bonds. And we might be you know, a little bit battered and bruised, but we're certainly nowhere near as, you know, absolutely killed off as global bonds and emerging market bonds. Does that defense relative position continue or improve?
I think it continues. I mean, you're right. We've declined, what, 50% of the decline of emerging markets. And that's premised on a couple of things. I think first, the obvious one is that we have very limited direct linkages to the war in Ukraine and exposure to Russia and Eastern Europe. But to your point, I mean, we're benefiting from these higher oil prices and the push to increase production as well. And so in the short term, at least, the GCC has been something of a sanctuary within the world of fixed income. Global Sukuk benefits also from having slightly shorter duration. But these short-term benefits don't alleviate, if you want, the rising risks of you know, lower oil prices tomorrow from you know, potential as the risks, I think, of you know, economic slowdowns, inflation, and higher oil prices impact demand.
This was the discussion then that I had with a sort of a former rates trader on Saturday night. I said, you know, he said it's another 18 months. We are delayed in our asphyxiation by another 18 months. So whatever slowdown you get in the United States of America, it doesn't land on our shows for at least 12 to 18 months. When you look at our bond market, do we have that level of immunity from rate hikes in America? It's not the same.
No, I mean, you know, we're very well placed for growth, like I said, because you have the benefits of oil, at least over these next sort of year to 2 years. I think the risk is that oil prices come off these highs. So, I mean, as you look forward, you've got to be thinking oil prices come down from here, not continue rising, although, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty attached to that view. And then
Can I just push you a little bit on why you think those prices will come lower? Because, look, I've got two sides of every trade. I've got people coming in here saying 150, and on an inflation basis, it was $180. Why do you think oil prices will come down from here?
Yeah, because I think the risks to growth and demand are increasing. And then also we have food inflation coming down the pipe. That's probably going to impact demand as well. And then there's also the possibility, although now it feels remote, but, you know, the conflict could end, you know, new supply, you know, new barrels could come online. So the risks are more that you see lower rather than higher over the coming sort of 18 to 24 months.
Now, your thesis would be is that we have increased our duration above benchmark to take advantage of the regional credit curves. Now, when I look at yields, I had Emirates MBD in here the other day, and Maurice was saying, look, I want to add to duration. This is on the global basis. I want to add to duration. I'm just not comfortable yet. 320. You are growing more comfortable with adding to duration, and if so, where?
So we've added in general, especially the long end, and that's because, you know, sometimes you have to do what's uncomfortable to make money. And, you know, our premise is that a lot has been priced into the U.S. curve. And while the U.S. economy is probably best placed globally, the risks from outside the U.S. continue to increase. And then we still have, you know, quite a bit of uncertainty, like I said, attached to these outlooks, from inflation to policy to growth. But We think that the risks are more balanced today, and we think the valuations in fixed income are more attractive. And given the uncertainties you have out there, fixed income typically is a very good hedge to an uncertain outlook. So that's the main reason why we think investors who have been, generally speaking, very worried about rising rates and underweight